I'll call the meeting to order. This is the April 26, 2016 meeting of the Fairfield Town Plan and Zoning Commission. First item on our agenda is bills and communications, the meeting minutes from April 12, 2016.
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Alessi.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Francis. Does everybody have a copy of that? I looked it over, didn't see anything. Anyone? Questions? Ready to vote?
Mr. Chairman, Mr.
Yes.
Corcoran will be sitting in for Mr. Barrett's at this point.
Got it, thank you. Commissioner Corcoran is sitting in for Commissioner Barrett's. All right. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Minutes are adopted unanimously. Next item is new applications to recommend a public hearing. 2333 Sherman Street, special permit application of 23 Sherman Street LLC pertaining to the construction of a 3-story mixed-use commercial and residential building in the Center Design District.
Mr. Chairman, I don't really have anything to add to that description. It is a proposed new development that does require a public hearing.
Okay. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Francis and second by Commissioner Alessi. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Moved to public hearing unanimously. Next is 5151 Park Avenue, special exception application of Sacred Heart University pertaining to the construction of a new athletic building in the R3 zone.
Again, this is, if you're familiar with the campus, they're looking to do what they are describing as an end zone building up by the football field. It is a new standalone athletic building. It does require a public hearing.
Okay. Thank you.
Make a motion to move the public hearing.
Motion by Commissioner Alessi, second by Commissioner Corcoran. Any comment or discussion on the item? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstention? Moved to public hearing unanimously. Next item is compliances. 1177 Post Road, compliance application of Cleveland Holding Company the third to Cleveland Holding Company third to establish a retail use in a portion of an existing building approved for office use in the Center Design District.
Okay, this building is the home of Webster Bank. It was solely a bank building on the first floor for many years with offices above. A couple of years ago, this commission approved an addition to the rear of the building that really comprised a 2-story elevator, lobby, and vestibule that provided better handicapped in access to all floors, including the basement. The basement was approved at that time for office space, and there is an office tenant down there. This proposal is to convert approximately 725 square feet of what had been approved for office in that lower level, basement level, to what the applicant is describing as an art studio and gallery that would include a tattoo parlor, which is essentially retail service, retail use, so it's a change in use from office to retail. The parking in the Center Design District for retail is the same as that for office, 1 per 250 feet. There is a parking summary that shows that, and it's consistent with the plan that was approved a couple years ago when that elevator lobby was constructed, so there's no increased draw on the parking, and there's sufficient parking on site for that use.
Thank you. Oh, it's attached to the application. Can I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Coleman,
Too bad.
Second.
second by Commissioner Alessi. Yep.
Just 11.
Okay. Mr. Coleman?
Since the parking doesn't require any additional spaces, I don't see a reason not to approve it.
Right. My review, it complies with all of our regulations. I don't see any issues with this. Commissioner Francis?
Is this space vacant now?
It is.
But the part, when it was approved 2 years ago or 3 years ago, whatever it was planned to be retail space, so the parking is already covered?
No, it was planned to be office space,
Okay.
but the parking for retail downtown is the same as that for office at 4 spaces per 1,000 square feet. So it's before you to change that designation from office to retail, but the parking count does not increase as a result.
So this only needs 3 spaces because it's 750?
For that particular square footage, that's correct.
Oh. Okay, because it
But there's a-
sounds like it could have kind of heavy use sometimes.
Well, there's a total of 35 parking spaces on site, so,
That are basically shared among
Yep.
all of the various uses. So there are
and it's part
spaces
of,
that are
and this
allocated.
site is kind of, while it doesn't have the vehicular connection, there are pedestrian connections as part of the overall Brick Walk Patriot Plaza complex that's now kind of owned by various corporate entities of Cleveland Holdings. So there's, within that overall shopping center, there's pedestrian egress should,
Right.
within that overall parking draw.
Is anyone here to discuss how they plan to interact with the Fairfield Art Council, Library, Theater Company, and University?
Well, this is not a public hearing, right? This is on the agenda as a compliance application. So, I mean, one of the alternatives we do have, as with anything, is to move it to public hearing, but I frankly don't see that as necessary. You know, I believe that this is a simple compliance application that meets all of our regulations that should be approved.
Okay.
I'm certainly happy to hear any other discussion on that if people feel strongly one way or the other, but
I think it's fine. I don't think it should be moved to public hearing. I think we can vote on, I think we can vote on that. I don't think we need to move this to a public hearing. I
Right.
think it's fine. It's a compliance issue.
does anyone else have any other comments or discussion, questions? No? The motion is to approve. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? All right, the
You have one. You have
application
one.
is, I'm sorry?
There is one,
Commissioner Francis?
Position.
I'm sorry, I did not realize that. So it passes 6 to 1, 6 to 1. Okay. Good. Next item on the agenda is 1547 Post Road, compliance application of Archer signs for an overall sign plan in the Center Design District.
This is a building downtown that suffered a fire some time ago. It had been the longtime home of 3 retail tenants on the first floor, Midas Touch Jewelers, a men's store, and Engraver's World. The newly built facade is complete. They're getting ready for reoccupancy of the building, and they're proposing a new overall sign plan for the first floor retail tenants as reverse channel letters, similar to other signs downtown. They're black faces with white light that shines back towards the building. The faces do not illuminate. And there is a letter signed by the property owner committing to the consistent prototype for the other 2 yet-to-be-named retail tenants.
Thank you.
Make a motion to approve?
Motion to approve by Commissioner Kennelly,
Second.
second by Commissioner Coleman. So, and Mr. Wendt, the sign plan complies with all of our regulations.
It does.
Okay. Commissioner Kennelly, any comments?
That's the only thing I was going to ask, so, no.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments or discussion?
the letters light up backwards, is that what we're saying? Reverse lit?
Correct.
And the white panel is just plain, right? That doesn't light.
Right, it's an aluminum panel that hides the electrical components that's going to be painted the same color as the building.
Right.
So that itself doesn't illuminate. The lights within the
Reverse lit.
aluminum channels will light towards, given a, it's similar to the same, the signs that are on the Fairfield University bookstore building. I wanted to say Borders, but that would,
Say that.
but my apologies to Fairfield University.
Keep dating yourself.
I was going to say the Fairfield store, and then I was really going to be dating myself.
All right. Anybody else? Ready to vote? Motion is to approve. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Compliance is approved unanimously. Next item is 120 Welsh Terrace, coastal site plan application of Love Where You Live Homes LLC pertaining to a new two-family dwelling in B-zone.
Okay, this, a two-family house is a permitted use as of right in the B zone. This is before you as a coastal site plan because this site contains and is adjacent to tidal wetlands. So when you have a multifamily house in the coastal zone, especially within 100 feet of tidal wetlands, it requires a coastal site plan application. So you have that, the applicant's report and the staff report before you in the site plan. There is a recommendation that the construction maintain a 15-foot setback from the tidal wetland line, which it does. The only thing that encroaches into that area now are some of the at-grade patios that are proposed. So we are recommending a 15-foot setback for those patios from the tidal wetlands line that would reduce them in depth by roughly a third. The applicant is aware of this recommendation and has no problem with that being established as a condition, should you find favor with this application. But other than that, the design requirements of the underlying B zone are complied with respect to the size and location of the proposed two-family house. Welch Terrace is a dead-end street that runs westerly from Ruane Street. There's 16 or 17 houses presently on the street, and it's presently a mix of two families and single families.
Thank you.
I'll make the motion to approve with the 15-foot setback as recommended by staff.
Okay, motion to approve with conditions by Commissioner Alessi. Second by Commissioner Coleman. Any comments? Commissioner Alessi, Commissioner Coleman?
No, it makes, meets all our regulations. You know, we have to raise them, and it look bigger when we raise them, but it does meet all our regulations, so I will approve, vote to approve this.
Thanks. I agree. I mean, there's really, there's no basis for denying this application. I think the recommendation for the condition is a good one, so I support that as well. Anyone else have any comments, questions? No? Commissioner Barrett?
Nothing, I mean, because I read the staff report. I mean, it was pretty strongly, you know, this is really strongly recommended. I mean, we talked about the fish, you know, how many fish were on display there, and schools of fish, and the importance of bait fish, and the whole entire, you know, just supporting the health of Long Island Sound and the population. Was there any other recommendation, just a 15-foot setback, or?
No, the applicant is actually proposing a, you know, an enhanced planting plan as part of their package, and they're kind of sensitive to that. We're just going to need to be careful during the construction period, but they're on board with.
So the plan
their
includes
report.
all that vegetation?
It does.
And planting and the buffer and everything? Okay. Because, I mean, that's why we get these things. It's not a question of like how big the house is, it's like, what's the impact on the, you know, tidal wetlands, so, okay, yeah, I mean, if it complies and those are the conditions, I would support it.
Very good, thank you. Anyone else? We ready to vote? Okay, the motion is to approve. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? The compliance application is approved with conditions unanimously. Next item is our public hearing. 845, 917 Mill Hill Terrace and 130, 156 Pease Avenue, special exception application of Maplewood Senior Living pertaining to the construction of an assisted living facility in Residence A, B, R3, and the DRD zones. This is continued from March 8th, 2016. We broke with the intervener in the middle of their presentation, so we'll resume with the intervener. Once that is complete, then we'll move to public comment. Everyone that wants to be heard will be heard. I just ask that you keep your comments relevant, germane to the application, and, as concise as you can. But everybody that wants to be heard will be heard, even if we have to continue it to another night, which I hope we don't have to, but if we do, we do. Once public comment is finished, then the applicant will have a rebuttal, and when the applicant finishes with their rebuttal, the public hearing will be closed, and then we'll take it up in executive session at our next meeting. All right? So with that, I'll turn it over to the intervener.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Is this switch to the bottom, Jerry?
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. My name is David Rosenstein. Just for the record, I reside at 340 Acorn Lane in Southport, Connecticut. And as I indicated to Attorney Fallon earlier, after much deliberation and thought, I wanted to place formally on the record that I intended to withdraw my notice of intervention this evening and instead incorporate my remarks that would have been made regarding land use and environmental issues, which is in the Plan of Conservation and Development, the master plan for a town, as part of my overall remarks addressing other issues such as traffic, safety, character, and conformity with the neighborhood. This way, it will be somewhat more judicious to keep my remarks instead of as bifurcated in two different parts, but in one presentation that I would intend to make. I do understand the consequences and ramifications of withdrawing my notice of intervention, but I would like to see this item proceed to a public hearing. There are a lot of people who have come out who wish to be heard, and instead of having them come out session after session, I've made the decision to make an overall larger presentation that would be, in my view, more cohesive, and therefore, with your permission, I'd like to withdraw my notice of intervention and intervener status.
Sure. Your withdrawal is accepted. That's not a problem at all. Appreciate the comments, and just ask that you keep your arguments and your comments, relevant and germane to the application and the issues that are, that we have to deal with.
Absolutely. So I didn't know if you wanted to officially go into the public session now, whether you wanted me to start off and lead things tonight, or there was any other...
You're up. You're there. You're ready to go. I think if you're ready, and then you can lead us off.
Great. Again, thank you, and I thank you all for your service. Public service is a difficult job, and you do it well, and I truly thank you for your time and commitment to the process. Without you, obviously, the process would not work. So I listened long and hard to the presentation by the applicant at the last session, and what I was kind of scratching my head about a little bit is that what we're proposing here is unprecedented for this neighborhood, and yet the entire presentation was limited to less than an hour. This has the potential of dramatically changing the landscape and character of this neighborhood, and all we heard was about 40 to 60 minutes of a presentation, which left more questions unanswered than answered. Now, what I heard a lot is that this was a low-impact development, and this would be good for the neighborhood. However, what I believe is being represented to you is, in effect, a wolf in sheep's clothes. Because when you scratch the surface and dig down into the reality of this, what you'll see is that it does not meet the special exception regulations under Section 27 of the zoning laws. The magnanimous nature of the applicant's business doesn't necessarily equate with the fact that they have a right to build this facility in this neighborhood. In fact, that they must meet the special exception conditions of approval in Section 27.4. They cannot meet that. And they really didn't address and review with you the specific requirements that they must meet to get approval. The fact is it's not an automatic right to build this facility in this neighborhood. It seemed to be characterized that it was perfectly okay. Could it be built in this neighborhood? Yes, if it meets all the qualifications, the standards, and the criteria within Section 27. What I will show and demonstrate to you tonight is that it does not do that. Let's start off with Section 27.4.1, which talks about the fact that the facility must be in harmony with and conform with the character and size of the neighborhood. Well, what do we have here as far as this proposed development? A 3-story, 92,000 square foot facility. Make no mistake about it. There was a lot of talk about 2.5, 3 stories. That was actually what was in the presentation of the applicant. It's 3 stories. Clearly a 3-story facility, and it's a commercial facility. This is a business. Maplewood Senior Living operates 6 facilities in the state of Connecticut. It is a business operation, it is a commercial venture, it is a money-making venture, and it's being dumped or put into a residential community. Now, when they had an information session, and this was referenced in the comments by the applicant, way back when at the Pequot Library, I asked one of the Maplewood representatives, where can I find a building, a commercial enterprise in this neighborhood of this size, 3 stories and 92,000 square feet? There was no answer other than to point to the Southport Woods condominiums, which are 2 stories high and are owner-occupied residences. They're not a business operation. This is putting a business operation with all its associated commercial aspects, deliveries, trucks, commercial refuse, commercial lighting, into a residential neighborhood. You will not find in this neighborhood anything like that, okay? Now, the only commercial property happens to be literally, and this wasn't brought up by the applicant either, no mention of Fairview of Fairfield, which is the old Southport Manor, which literally lies directly across the street from the entrance of this facility. If you want to find a commercial facility of this size and character, you need to go out to the Post Road. Now, what I find interesting is I attended all the Walgreens hearing sessions, and I listened very closely to the things that were being discussed at the Walgreens hearings. And I listened to the TPZ members say that Walgreens would basically potentially serve the entire community. That cannot be said about this facility. And moreover, there's no certainty that this facility would be guaranteed for Connecticut residents. If my Aunt Tilly wants to come up from Florida and apply to be a resident, she would be considered just like anybody else. So there's no preference to state of Connecticut residents. If they have meet the qualifications of the facility, they can come in. So this is not can be said to be in the best interest of the entire community. This is not a general store or a business that will be potentially available for access to all. The question at the Walgreens hearing that I heard also asked was, is this an area that is primarily residential? And a number of the TPZ commissioners felt, no, it wasn't, because there were commercial zones that line the Post Road. That cannot be said about this neighborhood. It is 99.9% residential, owner-occupied, except for the Fairview facility, which is directly across the street. So why should this neighborhood now shoulder a second facility right across the street from another one? It's the equivalent of putting a McDonald's across the street from a McDonald's. Now, let me talk a little bit about and offer you some evidence. First of all, the facility, the Fairview facility, does, in part, exactly the same nature of business in providing Alzheimer's and dementia care that this facility would provide. And to that point, I would like to hand out from the Fairview facility's own website the fact that they provide dementia and Alzheimer's care to individuals who reside in that community. Not a word was mentioned by the applicant that their facility would be right across the street from another facility of the same kind. So right off the bat, given the size and the nature of the business, which is a for-profit enterprise, under 27.4.1, this is not in harmony with the neighborhood. It is not of a size and character that's consistent with the neighborhood. And right there, they have failed to meet the qualifications of the regulations, and it gives you the ability to reject this application on that basis alone. Now, I listened during the presentation to the fact that there's a need for memory care facilities. And again, I think that the nature of the business is certainly a worthy one, but that doesn't make it the right business for this neighborhood. And while there is a need for facilities of this kind within the state of Connecticut, within 35 miles, approximately 30 minutes of this proposed facility, there are no fewer than 94 senior nursing and assisted living care facilities. In fact, all 6 of their facilities are within 30 minutes of this facility. Of the 94, 40 to 50% advertise themselves as memory care facilities. I'd like to give you a list of those facilities.
Yeah, one second. Yep. Would you mind questions?
I have a question for you, Tom.
Sure.
I can understand you have, size of the building, the neighborhood, this or that, but your argument as far as putting a McDonald's across the street from McDonald's, I'm sure they've researched the business plan, and if there are other units, complexes, half hour away, an hour away, I'm sure there's a need for it. So I don't know where that comes in as far as the zoning compliance comes in. I mean, I can understand your argument. It's a business operating in a commercial business operating in a residential zone, a
Correct.
building, these things. But as far as the business plan goes, I mean, that's for them to determine, really. I mean, we just approved one of these not too far ago down behind the Carlton. So, I mean, there's obviously a need for this, which I don't understand why we have to look at that argument.
Well, let me address and respond to your question, Commissioner. First of all, those other facilities, you will not find more than one located in the town of Fairfield in the same contiguous area, within literally feet of each other. 2, many of these facilities don't operate at 100% capacity. They distinguish themselves based upon the nature of the services that they provide and the quality of care that they provide, and they market themselves, quite frankly, to different socioeconomic classes. It's like you can go in and buy the Lexus, or you can go in and you can buy the Honda. And so there may be differences in terms of the level of services that they provide, but that doesn't equate ultimately the nature of the business that they're doing, and that this neighborhood is asked to now potentially shoulder 2 facilities literally within feet of each other, the driveways. And so that would be my response. I would also note that under consideration for this town is, I believe, a proposal to develop a facility along Stratfield Road. And so when you look at the fact, and on this list is really the facilities within 35 miles that are in the state of Connecticut, the list would have been a lot greater than 94 if you went across the border into the state of New York. I didn't even include those. But we heard from the applicant a lot of introductory remarks about the need for this facility. My point is that there are close to 100 facilities. by. And so there's not a desperate need in this town, like you said, there are many of these facilities, to have this facility located here. And in fact, what I'd like to show you,
Well, forgive me for interrupting.
Sure.
It's
like law school.
I'm not leaning one way or the other here, but the fact that there are a number of facilities doesn't equate to a saturation of the market and a lack of need. I mean, there are a number of these different kinds of assisted living facilities that are being proposed and they're being built in the town. Somebody mentioned the one behind Carlton. There are a number of them around town, but we also just went through some public hearings through the affordable housing charrettes and the committee with the affordable housing report, and there was a finding that the town of Fairfield is in need of assisted living facilities.
Okay.
And so I understand the data point of the number of facilities that there do exist, these others in the area and within 30 miles, et cetera. But I don't know, I don't know that I agree that equates to a saturation of the market and that there isn't an additional need for more beds, basically. So I don't know if you have data that speaks to that.
well, I don't have the data as to whether there is a need for more beds, but the primary argument here is now this neighborhood is being asked to shoulder a second facility in literally steps of another facility which exists. Okay.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, if that's the point,
That's the point, and
that's made.
it was responding really, frankly, to an argument that was advanced that seemed to articulate a desperate need for these facilities. And I didn't see any empirical evidence as to that presented by the applicant, and I would just say that there are a number of facilities, again, within 35 miles. I think it goes to the fact that if this is not built, somehow, there are going to be memory care, dementia patients that are somehow out on the street. This really isn't going to make a difference, in my view, in terms of the object need, coupled with the fact that it's the wrong facility for a residential neighborhood.
Okay. Commissioner Barron.
Mr. Rosenstein, you use the word facilities a lot. Are you familiar with the difference between a nursing home or skilled nursing facility and an assisted living facility?
I've learned the difference between assisted living, dementia care, memory care units, nursing homes. As in preparation for my appearance here today, I did an extensive amount of research into differences. Some we're getting a little off topic here, but some facilities offer a variety of levels of care. Graduated care facilities. The Maplewood facilities advertise that they offer various levels of care for seniors. And not every facility is the same. And that's why on my chart, those that specifically marketed themselves or advertised themselves as memory care facilities, which this facility and the presentation by the applicant seemed to emphasize, I was showing that there are other memory care facilities.
Right, memory care, but and again, we're not, like Mr. Alessi says, we're not going to make a decision based on any kind of business case. It's not just what we do about whether something is justified or not, whether there's a business reason, but our understanding, again, from a previous application, that anything that you've put in here, Fairfield or Southport, is not an assisted living facility. The first one in Fairfield that was approved is the one behind the Carlton.
Right.
So everything on here, they are facilities. Some do memory care, but they're not assisted living facilities. That's the only. And,
At least
no
in
difference-
Fairfield.
At least in Fairfield. The other ones could be.
Right, we're not commenting on, and that was really,
Yeah.
thank you for
Yeah.
clarifying the point. I'm not commenting, we're not commenting on, for example, the one he listed in Brookfield. I just don't know whether that's assisted living or not. But for the town of Fairfield, the first assisted living facility, quote-unquote, was approved, the one behind the Carrollton. So then, I think it was in response to the charrettes and the Affordable Housing Authority doing their investigation and so forth to show that, we the town of Fairfield does need assisted living facilities. And so if that, I don't want to get us so far off track here, but,
Right.
that if you're trying to make that point, that's not.
Well,
we're
I
not
would
getting
agree
at.
with you that we're headed a little bit off track. I mean, this is a commercial business. This is a for-profit enterprise, and it's being put in an area that's 99.9% residential owner occupied. When you have already a commercial facility, nursing home, dementia care, literally right across the street, I wouldn't think that you would approve and you may not like the analogy, from a planning and zoning standpoint, putting a McDonald's across the street from McDonald's. Now, you may not view them as being the same, but from the standpoint of being a commercial for-profit business and looking at it in that abject sense, that's essentially what it is. And there's no neighborhood that there are plans to do that to. And there are other reasons why it doesn't conform with the character and size of the neighborhood. There's no 3-story building that is of a commercial size until you go out to the Post Road. Now, again, this zoning status would allow that if it meets all the other criteria, and my argument to you tonight is that when you look at each of the criteria and look what the zoning regulations say, it doesn't make the grade. And there are things that have been absolutely ignored by the applicant in their presentation that the criteria of the regulations say you need to consider.
Right. Commissioner Coleman, thank you for that.
Mine wasn't a question as much as a comment, at the risk of beating a dead horse, but I agree with my fellow commissioners that it's not our job to assess the business model for this proposal. But Commissioners McAleese, Francis, and I attended a day-long training for people in the state of Connecticut who serve on planning councils, and one of the points that they made was projections, I think going out to 2030 or 2050, that showed essentially every county in Connecticut aging very considerably from where we are now. So I think however many we have, it's probably not enough based on what the demographic projections for the state are.
And Commissioner, that may very well be true and accurate, but it's a different question, A, as to whether the facility, this type of a facility, is appropriate for this neighborhood. B, I would have it a little bit of a difficult time to fathom that you don't consider the nature of a business when you're considering an application. And I'm not sure you meant to say that, because this is obviously one of the uses that falls within the special exception regulations. So every day, I think you're being asked to consider what is the nature of the business. Now, the business versus the business model, I agree with you. How they market themselves, what their specialty is, but ultimately, I think that it's part of this body's duties and responsibilities to consider what is the applicant, what is their function, what is the nature of their business. So
No,
I don't mean to
clearly
be-
that's the case.
Okay.
Clearly that's the case. I think the point is simply that we heard you making the argument that there wasn't a need for this kind of facility within the town of Fairfield, that we had enough. And I think we've certainly beat that horse
Yeah,
enough.
May I?
Yeah.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I've served nearly 10 years, and my concern is often unintended consequences. So oftentimes, it's important to think about what your decision is. So we're spending a lot of time talking about what this particular use would be in this change, but ultimately, what you're talking about a little bit is this idea that, or you're pointing to, is this idea that you have a residential area which could be converted to commercial. But one problem, and so I could say to myself, wow, a very large commercial structure being left in a residential neighborhood. We kind of argued this, I argued unsuccessfully this point related to a development near the Hi-Ho a while back, related to another medical facility that was approved. I voted against it. But in this case, those were general medical offices. But in this case, unfortunately, it seems, and maybe if you have data you can show me, where there are examples, especially with the demographics we're looking at in this part of the region, where I would be worried that a facility like this might go belly up and therefore I had approved a change to a commercial zone of enormous three-story buildings that then could be something else. They're commercial. But it doesn't, I wonder if you have evidence where that scenario would be the case, because if you did, then you'd be building an argument that would be stronger for someone like myself to consider. But it does sound as though, in fact, that it's pretty much a can't-miss commercial enterprise to go into this kind of business, because it doesn't look there's a lot of failure right now because of the demographic trends in the Northeast. Anything about that you can talk about where I might be concerned as a commissioner who might be receptive to your argument?
I mean, anecdotally from my own research, for just to make my own statement with regards to what I uncovered, a lot of the success of these facilities goes to how they are run. The state often will step in and shut down a facility if the nature ultimately of the care that they're providing they deem to be insufficient. There's evidence of abuse. But I guess the fact that they've built 6 in Connecticut already goes to the fact that they feel that building a 7th is in their best interest from an economic standpoint. Again, to turn your argument a little bit on yourselves in a polite way, they wouldn't be doing this unless they thought that they could make money. That doesn't make it right when you look at the regulations necessarily to be located in this neighborhood. I offered and raised before that the perfect site for this, and this will get into the next documents I want to give, would be the old Exide site, which is right along the Post Road. They have a facility in Darien that's on the Boston Post Road. And they have other facilities, and I think this is germane because where their other 6 facilities are, and this will tell you something about where they should go and where this one is proposed. And I'd like to give you maps and images of where their other 6 facilities are located. They are located near main highways. They are located, some in commercial areas. One is located next to the Pez factory out in Orange. And so the existing facilities are not located in any neighborhood such as what is proposed here. They do have a facility, and I can go over this. Let me pass these out so you can see.
Yeah, well, that's what I was just actually looking for, because I believe so.
And what this proves is that how different this area is from where their other facilities are located. And that, in my view, demonstrates the fact that this area that is being proposed for development is not suitable because every other facility that they have is not located in a residential area right next to Mill Hill School. Another point that you did not really hear very much about until it was raised by Chairman Wagner, the fact that this would be proposed right next to Mill Hill School. Now, if you look at, I'll wait till you all have them, where these are Google images either from satellite or what they call Google Street View. So to the extent that Google had Street View, I gave you the Street View and the satellite image. Some of them only had the satellite image. But I mean, they are located on major thoroughfares, 46 Stony Hill Road in Bethel, Strawberry Hill Avenue, if you're familiar with in Norwalk. It's a major thoroughfare. Boston Post Road in Darien, I already referenced that one. In Danbury, Hospital Avenue. And then the one that's somewhat more remote is Mount Pleasant Road, and that is located, it seems to be in woods far away from any residence. It's not in the middle of a residential neighborhood. And so the last one, which we mentioned on Indian River Road, if you see some of the other things, I know it's difficult to see, but that is right next to the Pez factory. I believe that's in Orange, if I'm not mistaken. So they've seen fit to build these in other appropriate areas, but none of them the other 6 facilities that they operate are in a residential neighborhood like this. And I would encourage you, if you haven't done so already, to go out, look at the property, look at the neighborhood, and compare it to where their other facilities are.
So just to be clear, though, the portion of this site, though, is adjoining commercial property along the Kings Highway West, right? Not Kings Highway West, where the Hair of the Dog is, and Coromandel Restaurant.
That's not adjacent, that's across, that would be across the street. When you exit 19,
Right.
you literally, you go down Pease Avenue and they would be on your right. This is before there. As you're going down the exit ramp of 19, it would be on your right, literally off the exit ramp. And so it's really not
Yeah.
adjacent. Those things are across the street.
But to follow up,
It would be
Right.
behind that.
yeah, in other words, to follow up the chairman's point, it does seem as though these are similar to those facilities you mentioned in that, let's say I was visiting from another part of Fairfield or from another, another community, I might be on Interstate 95, come off at 19, and there I'd make the right on Pease Avenue,
Right.
and I would be pretty much on my way to where this is, right? I mean, it's
Well,
literally
you're in the middle
off
of a
it's
residential
right-
neighborhood
right,
at
but I'm
that
saying, but
point.
it's right off of exit 19, right? I mean, you make the right there.
Well,
to get- I mean,
that would
right.
be one way, Commissioner, to access it. You would have to go
Woodrow
up.
Avenue also?
You'd have to go either up Pease,
Right.
left on Sherwood, right on Woodrow, right on Mill Hill Terrace.
Right.
The entrance is proposed to be on Mill Hill Terrace,
Right.
which is lined with residences. Pease Avenue is lined with residences. Woodrow is lined with residences. There isn't a demarcation point between the residences and the entrance, like in these other facilities that are located either in commercial areas along the Post Road in Darien, which is a very commercial area. And so they sought fit with the other 6 residences to put these, I would argue, in appropriate spots. Like I would argue the Exide site is particularly appropriate for them, right on the Post Road with a water view. But this is different. And in being different, it does not meet the regulations of the zoning laws under Section 27. And this shows you that, at least in the other situations, they were considerate about where they located their facilities. I submit to you that's not the case here. And again, on that basis, I think you have enough to deny it under 27.4.1. Now, were there any questions?
Thank you. We should move this along.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next, under the zoning regulations, under 27.4.3, as well as 27.4.8, it talks about the proposal should not create an undue hazard or congestion and cannot cause traffic hazards. And when you listen to the presentation and you asked very prescient questions of the traffic engineer, I thought that what became very clear is that, A, we have a school that is located immediately adjacent to this facility. There is only one contiguous sidewalk that runs east to west direction along Mill Hill Terrace. There's no sidewalk on both sides of the street. That sidewalk runs from down at Woodrow if you were to walk that way, in a easterly direction up towards Mill Hill School. It's frequented by bicyclists and pedestrians who are walking to school every day. As you pointed out, they acknowledged that their traffic study did not take into account bicyclists and pedestrians. They acknowledged that the study was only done 2 times during the course of the year. It was not done during each of the seasons. that school, it hosts spring and summer Little League games. And so there's been no consideration by the application into the safety issue, the congestion issue, the traffic issue. And there'll be other people here who have pictures of that Mill Hill Terrace during Little League season and what it looks like with the traffic. And so the impact has not been assessed in terms of the traffic and congestion. Also, if you look at the dates that the study was performed, it was performed during a vacation, a school vacation, or immediately the first day back after a vacation had just ended. I would submit to you, those are the wrong times to do a traffic study. You don't do a traffic study when the kids are out of school, okay? This would cause a curb cut on the contiguous sidewalk. If you look, and I'll talk a little bit later about the POCD, the master plan, the POCD talks about eliminating curb cuts. This is the promotion of a curb cut. Now, I would point out that one of the regulations under the zoning regulation is under 27.4.5, the proposed use shall be in conformity with the master plan of the town. So, in my view, you need to consider all the relevant parts of the master plan. And I'm going to get into that in a little bit while. I heard one section quoted by the applicant regarding the master plan. Do you know why? Because 99.9% of the relevant provisions of the master plan would be completely antithetical to this development. He cites the one portion, but if you're balancing all of the relevant provisions of the master plan objectively, this application should be denied. Let me get back to the traffic and safety issue, which must be considered under 27.43 and .4.8. So, again, the line of sight issue you brought out is at a bare minimum. And what I'd like to do is show you what the line of sight currently looks like. First, if you didn't have an understanding, I don't know whether you've been out to the site, here's a picture of the contiguous sidewalk that runs east-west up to Mill Hill School. And I think it's important that you know what we're talking about here. On a personal level, my kids are out of that school. But I have concerns about all the bicyclists and the pedestrians every day that I see. We heard testimony from their traffic engineer that the average speed, I believe, was 41 miles per hour, David? Yes. Okay, 16 miles per hour more than the legal limit. Okay. It is a safety issue. And so what you see here, you see no sidewalk on the left-hand side of the street looking in this photo. The contiguous sidewalk runs on the right-hand street only. That's what they would propose to put a curb cut in order to create a driveway. Now, getting back to, in terms of the driveway, here is how large the driveway is of the Fairview facility that is diagonally across the street from the proposed driveway. So now you're going to have two driveways at an angle, and they don't have their map here, but if you look at the map, if you look at the driveway, and they didn't talk about this, for the Fairview facility and where this proposed driveway is, they're on a diagonal separated by maybe perhaps 100 feet. And we have other people who will have pictures of the driveway. But this is how large the driveway of the Fairview facility is on the opposite side of the street. Imagine this type of a driveway, because you can't visualize it because it hasn't been built yet, of what we're talking about in terms of a curb cut where there's a contiguous sidewalk presently. And here is the line of sight issue you also raised. Mr. Chairman, I believe that you questioned them on the line of sight issue and it being at its bare minimum. To visualize it, here is the blind corner going from the west to east direction. Now you're going to, under their proposal, have traffic coming out of their facility. Now, they didn't talk about either the level of traffic. It's not just the workers who work at the facility. You have relatives who come to visit their relatives who have cars. You have delivery trucks, box trucks. When I asked about 18-wheelers at their information session, it wasn't entirely clear the size of the trucks that would be making deliveries. You have sanitation trucks that are coming to the facility. You have ambulances and emergency vehicle traffic coming to the facility, as well as workers. And so you're adding all of this into there, and other than measuring the existing traffic, okay, I heard very little in the presentation as to these other categories other than the workers who work there. Visitors, sanitation, delivery trucks, emergency vehicles, adding to traffic. And we have other people who will make presentations tonight about the number of calls, emergency calls, that go to Fairview alone. And now the proposal is to put another type of facility that would obviously result in similar types of calls, given the nature of the occupants of that facility.
Can I ask a question?
Sure,
Just so I can follow your discussion, because these photos came, minutes after you described. So we have a sidewalk.
That's a sidewalk the only sidewalk on Mill Hill.
Yeah, what's the other sidewalk? What are you trying to indicate on this one?
That is the line of sight issue.
So this
Okay.
is roughly where the driveway would be off the
No,
private
the
site? Is that what you're saying?
the driveway would be ahead of that.
Oh, I see, so around the bend.
Right, around the
And
bend. It's a blind driveway. You would not be able to see that driveway until you got to a certain point. Now, that other driveway...
Standing in Fairview's driveway looking out?
Yes.
That's to give us an idea of the width of it?
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. And this is the blind corner from the other direction, driving west. And I apologize, the pictures, you can get the sense of, you cannot see around that corner. It's a dangerous intersection, and when you're already going down that road, on average 16 miles per hour, it's an accident waiting to happen. Okay. And, because I live close by, I've seen accidents of cars coming around that corner at a high rate of speed, and that ended up in the telephone pole at the corner of Woodrow and Acorn Lane. And so I know it is a distinct possibility, not just theoretical. The issue of a driveway, of the proposed driveway, was not just a Dave Rosenstein issue. Evidently, it was an issue for the Fairfield Police Department, because in their code enforcement minutes, okay, they raise the issue of the driveway. These code enforcement minutes are from January 6, 2015. I heard no evidence presented by the applicant addressing the police department's concern. If you go to page 2 at the bottom, the police code enforcement comments are there. Would like to get full all-around vehicular access. I don't believe that exists, but I'm sure Attorney Fallon will correct me on rebuttal if I'm wrong. Include fencing around the pond and wooded area. I don't believe that's on the proposed plan as well. That had been acknowledged previously. And then they even recognize in item 5 the line of sight issue, and in 6 they say the driveway is a concern. That's our police department. From an access standpoint, we heard nothing from the applicant, and the commissioner raised Pease Avenue. Well, when employees of the facility who take public transportation get dropped off at the bus stop at the corner of the Post Road and, what is that? Where the gas station? Pease Avenue. Pease Avenue, thank you. And they start walking to work. Are they going to walk up Pease Avenue, make a left on Sherwood, make a right on Woodrow, make another right on Mill Hill Terrace, go all the way down, walk through the driveway and come down? No. We all know the reality is that they're going to cut through the gated area that's on Pease Avenue, okay? And so let's not dilute ourselves of, in reality, what will happen here. So what we're doing is we're taking this employee transient worker force that comes in and routing them through the residential neighborhood, cutting through what they said should not be an area of access for employees. But I don't think it's realistic to expect that the employee is going to walk, up the hill all the way around to use the existing driveway. That's not being very realistic. I want to move on. One of the conditions of approval under the regulations is that it should not impair the value of adjacent properties. That's found within 27.4.1. And this is a critical point. What evidence did the applicant offer to meet that burden? Nothing. Zero, nada, nilch, nothing. It offered nothing. There was a blind statement without any evidence from the applicant's attorney that it would not impair residential values. That's not enough, a statement from an advocate. Where is the proof? They offered zero. I attended the Walgreens hearing, as I'm sure many of you did. At least in the Walgreens situation, the applicant brought in a certified appraiser to offer evidence with regard to that issue. We've seen nothing here. What I'd like to do is to give you some information from an objective service, Zillow, which has real estate values for comparable properties located in the contiguous area around the proposed development compared to other areas that have line of sight or that are in direct commercial, adjacent to commercial areas. And you will see that, and I think it's common sense, if you have a house in a residential area that doesn't have a potential, what could be perceived, and this is not a criticism of their construction techniques or the nature of the building they're proposing, but what could be viewed to some people as being an eyesore, and you compare that to a house, comparable home in a residential neighborhood that doesn't have that, ask yourselves, is there going to be a difference between home values between the two? One that has that and one that doesn't have that. But let me offer you, because one of the commissioners said I should be prepared with bringing evidence, and so I'm going to offer you that.
But that's not a problem, as long as,
I'm offering you something. You may find fault in it, you may not like it, you may choose to quibble over one thing versus another, but they offered nothing. Okay? So it's easy to make a hollow statement when you can't back it up. So you could review this, or, 884 Mill Hill Terrace, a three-bedroom, two-bath, approximate 1,500 square foot home. That's obviously in the area. The value there, the Zillow estimate, this is, again, not Dave Rosenstein, this is their service, $621,328. If you go to the next page, you go to 60 Arbor Drive. That is a property that looks out over a commercial landscaping business and looks out towards the Post Road, 3 bedrooms, 2 bath. I got to visit my optometrist here. It looks like 1,600 square feet, slightly even bigger than the other property, $574,663, about a 10% difference in the price. And I know we want to keep moving this. This next comparative process, 30 Sherwood Place. Again, this is right in the immediate area where you would have if the proposal went through, you'd have a line-of-sight view into this planned development, which, by the way, again, I attended the session back at the Pequot Library. Their landscape person who came to that said very clearly, in the fall and the winter, the growth of the plantings would be such that you would have a direct view into that facility. They just can't put in mature trees that it's going to create an effective block. People who live adjacent to this, Sherwood, Pease, even from Mill Hill Terrace, would, given the size of the facility, being 3 stories, even though it's on a downgrade, would have line-of-sight view into this facility. So here on 30 Sherwood Place is a 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath, 1,300 square foot residence, almost $487,000. 42 Hulls Highway. That is they're right on the corner, a little bit in up Hulls Highway, off the Post Road. It's across the street from what used to be a candy store, and now they're making a health food store there. But now really across from a commercial, 3-bedroom, 1 bath, 1,283 square feet, $432,000. Again, about a 10% reduction in comparable size properties. Now, if you want to go to something that's in the McMansion type area in terms of size, 1,100 Mill Hill Terrace. No offense to anybody who may own this. I'm sorry, not Mill Hill Terrace. I think the last one, I have 4 here, but the one I'm referring to, yes, 934 Mill Hill Terrace, a 5-bedroom, 4.5 bath, 4,000 square foot plus residence. Okay, valued at $1.282 million. If you go a comparable size property, 943 Kings Highway. Again, that looks into the what used to be Walgreens, now is the Michael Stores lot, has a line of sight into a commercial facility, 1.159. So a difference there. And the other one is the same. So you have this. I don't want to beat a dead horse by going through these, but here is objective evidence, again, from an independent, not me, I didn't hire him, somebody who says, if you look at 2 properties, and they've offered nothing on the impact to residential home values, that there's going to be a diminution in terms of home value if you're across the street from a for-profit commercial business.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Commissioner McInnes.
I appreciate the analysis and the evidence for this particular bit with the Zillow, I think my gut would probably tell me that it would have some effect, but if you look at the information you gave us, you didn't consider acreage size. And like that first example, 884 Mill Hill Terrace is 33,000 square feet, if you look at the acreage. So I think that's reflected in the value of the property as well, that it's not just the square footage of the house. So I don't know that you can really look at this. The last two might be more of an argument, the 934 Mill Hill Terrace and 943 Kings Highway.
I will agree with you, Commissioner. There is a little bit, in some respects, more art than science, because unless you have the exact same everything, you can try to drive, a hole in how perfect the analysis is. And I will grant you that there are differences between them. Some are completely rehabilitated. The one on Kings Highway West was almost like a tear down of everything but the skin, because I'm familiar with that property, and rebuilt entirely on the inside. The one on Mill Hill Terrace is new construction. So there are differences, but these are all comparisons within Southport, not Southport and necessarily another community, or Southport and Fairfield at least, not looking at West Hartford, which I know is often compared to Fairfield in terms of size. So, again, I'm trying to give you some reference point in the absence of not being provided any information. I'd like to pass out, for your convenience, relevant excerpts from the master plan, which I believe are germane, which as I read from the regulations, this proposal needs to be in conformity with the master plan. Ironically, Mr. Garofalo, the owner whose estate owns this property, was actually on the master plan committee. So, in effect, his words and those of the other people who served are found within there. But again, weighing the volume and amount of statements in here objectively against the one statement that was offered by the applicant, I think it's sufficient for you to deny the application.
Jill Kelly still alive? She's still alive. Oh, sorry. Yeah, what's up with the practice now? I think it's like relevant second, but yeah. Yeah, no, same, but it's the old.
So, at the risk of engendering the wrath of Vice Chairman Alessi, who, or any of the other commissioners for that matter, I'm not going to sit here and read each of the germane provisions from the master plan, but I will, with your indulgence, highlight some of the more salient ones. If you look at page 39, encroachment of commercial zones into, this is what I think one of the other commissioners said, encroachment of commercial zones into residential areas should be discouraged. On page 48 and 49.
Excuse me, can I just interrupt you there?
Sure.
for a moment? Just to be clear, and this actually was a part of the question that Commissioner Cannelli had asked before. This is not an application for a zone change. So
Understood.
so this policy statement at the bottom of page 39 is a general policy statement for the town of Fairfield that says that the encroachment of commercial zones should be discouraged into residential zones, like changing a residential zone to a commercial zone to expand that commercial zone into a residential zone. That's not what this is. Okay? I want to be clear, because I don't want there to be any confusion with you or in. No, you know, if when we get to the further public comment, then, you know, it's really not, yeah, I'm sorry, but it's really not appropriate to have, you know, just questions being yelled from the audience at this time. You know, right, and that's what you did. I appreciate your apology. So this is a permitted use in a residential zone, and it's not an application to change the zone to a commercial use.
I understand.
It's an application for a specialist.
Certainly understand that. And again, I would bring it back to my opening, one of my earlier comments, that from the permitted use to whether this is suitable of having a commercial for-profit business in a residential area, to me, is the issue. Understanding that technically, this could be built, again, it's a wolf in sheep's clothes, it doesn't belong here.
Fair enough. I just didn't
Okay.
want there to be any confusion.
Page 40, undeveloped parcels should be considered for acquisition by the town for open space. There's a whole section on environment and ecology on page 47. In part, it says, these wetlands and watercourses, which we know are indispensable and irreplaceable but fragile natural resources with which this town has been endowed. Our goals aimed at preserving these resources would include serious consideration of the following, and then they go on. They list control of pollution. I will offer evidence about how there are pollutants on that property. Develop, in 1.9, direct development away from fragile portions of our land environment, particularly from the shore, wetlands, and natural floodplain. In 13, reduce or prevent the discharge of pollutants to groundwater and surface waters. I will show you in their report, their remediation is only going to remediate the test pits that they did the testing in. Yet we all know that they are tearing open large swaths of that property to build basically a building that has a 30,000 square foot footprint times 3, because it's 3. You can't do that and just say, oh, I'm going to just dig around the test pit or some of the other wells. What about all the pollutants on all the other parts of the property that they're not remediating? Okay. Community appearance on the bottom of 48, to preserve the valuable visual character of an area and prevent inappropriate construction. Bottom of 49 talks about that the pace of development for small and mid-sized parcels has recently accelerated dramatically. Oversized yards are being subdivided and developed, as are many vacant lots and old fields. This informal open space is disappearing rapidly. Once developed, it is gone forever. If you go to 52, talk to the master plan, fulfilling the following broad objectives: conservation, the conservation of natural, scenic resources, wildlife habitat, water supply, and other natural resources. Page 53, community character, under B, support a policy of encouraging the acquisition of land for open space. Community safety on page 55, encouraging construction of sidewalks. What we're doing here is effectively eliminating a contiguous sidewalk. Encouraging the development of better and safer pedestrian and bicycle access. We're doing the complete opposite. Page 57, under transportation, safe movement of traffic. I think that there are legitimate concerns regarding the safe movement of traffic on Mill Hill Terrace. Establish sidewalks and bicycle paths which are safe. We're not doing that. We're doing the opposite. On page 58, elimination of curb cuts. I addressed that earlier. We're creating a curb cut. Considering effects of additional truck traffic, particularly potential impacts to residential neighborhoods. And we heard by the applicant that this had been approved by the town's economic, I guess, development group in town. But if you look at the economics on page 58, they particularly state under the master plan to designate sites with proper access for appropriate economic use that will not be detrimental to established residential areas. And I leave you with that, because that's exactly what this proposal is, detrimental to an established residential area. The last area that I wanted to get into you with this evening concerns the issue of the environmental issues, the safety issues, because, again, I heard, an argument that, by the applicant that you're not a mini EPA, okay? But you're supposed to consider whether the use is in conformity with the master plan. And the master plan has, and I read these earlier, and I'm not going to repeat them, a whole bunch of criteria regarding consideration of a proposal and the impact on potential pollutants, the impact on wetlands and watercourses, and basically safety from an ecological, hydrological standpoint. Because this property, which runs, in some respects, the water runs down from a north to south direction, meaning when it rains, the water comes over Mill Hill Terrace, runs through the property in a southerly direction, spills out into a culvert, which goes out under the post road and eventually out to the Sound. And water running through that property from a hydrological standpoint is going to carry with it, especially during construction, any pollutants. And so the master plan says you need to be considering these issues, and the regulations say you need to consider the master plan. So I want to present to you, because you asked to see it the last time, the hygienics report, which was required to, when phase 2 testing was to be performed on the site. And
You have?
And what is critical, and I realize you might need time to take and read through this report, but what is really critical are the tables that are at the end of the report, because they give the test results for various forms of contaminants, whether they be heavy metals or petroleum hydrocarbons and things of that nature. And the report then summarizes what's on the various tables found within the report. And the report summarizes, particularly on page 21, but throughout the entire report. Page 21 is the recommendation, but the findings. And I have a summary chart, which I offered the last time. I don't know if you still have that or need another copy, of what contaminants were found on the property that exceeded certain levels. Now, if you have that, I won't give that out, but if you'd like another copy, I can. So now you have, that's it.
That's it. Yep.
So you have that.
Does anyone else need a copy?
Yeah, I'll take it.
Sure. Thanks.
Excuse me, do you have the other report? The next one.
Now, there was, you know, I may have given out one of my own copies.
Yeah, I think it's.
I've got, I have it here.
It's this one right here, has the writing on it.
Oh, okay. Do you need another copy for this one?
So, you know, on page 48 of the master plan, it talks about reviewing the plans with particularly the soil and water contamination, and that's in section 3.1.2. Section 3.1.5, control of pollution, high standard of environmental quality and all relevant aspects, and in section 3.1.13, reduce or prevent discharge of pollutants to the ground and surface water. So these are goals of the master plan, and these are things that you need to consider pursuant to section 27 of the regulations. And so here, and I'm going to get to my point, and that is, here's a study that was done by their expert. And I see that he's here tonight. And you see that there were a total of, I think it was, let me just get the number. And I mentioned this at the last yeah. There were 28 test pits over 27 acres, with none in Lot 3. And I heard one of the comments last time, well, that's a lot of test pits. But 10 out of 28, 36%, had readings in excess of some standard, either the residential direct exposure criteria for various compounds or the surface water protection criteria levels. And so those included lead in two of the test hand boring, one hand boring and one test pit, PAHs, which is a petroleum hydrocarbon, in at least, I guess it is 5 areas, and these are not the water ones; these are the soil ones. ETPH, which is another petroleum hydrocarbon, in one of the hand borings. Copper, again, in one of the test pits, and then in the water monitoring wells, or piezometric wells, there were arsenic, lead, PAHs, and cadmium and chromium that exceeded either the groundwater protection criteria or surface water protection criteria. And the testimony that before inland wetlands is some of these were only marginally above the levels, but that's like almost pregnant. I mean, they're either above or they're not above, and that's why they have the criteria, and they're above. So now getting back to page 21, they're only talking about removing debris and soils at the particular test point. And I made this point earlier. They're not talking about removing debris or evidence of these contaminants in any other areas. So that's like putting a Band-Aid on an open gash. Okay, you're addressing it at that specific site, but you're doing nothing about the rest of the property. I would submit to you that there needs to be a more comprehensive cleanup of this property beyond just the test pits where they performed their tests or where they took their water samples. And if you see here and you read through the report I gave you, their expert does not discuss at all the fact that, with respect to cadmium and chromium, those elements were found. So his report is devoid of mentioning that, although on the tables at the end, you see they exceeded the criteria. His report doesn't talk about that. So it's silent as to whether that needs remediation or not. Who knows? His report didn't address it. Also, they're only talking about eliminating, or addressing, I should say, certain of the test sites, not talking about anything else. And again, it's limited to at that particular site. And so when you open up the land to create a driveway that's going to lead down to this 30,000 square footprint building, you're going to not be just working in the test site area, you're going to be working in the entire area, opening up the ground, potentially spreading contaminants. Now, there are over 20 different types of remediation techniques. The report is silent as to which one they're going to use. I don't know whether whatever one they use is going to end up spreading more contaminants or not. We just don't know. And if you're following the master plan of the town, you should be concerned about this development. It specifically says you should be. Then you should reject this application as being deficient because there's a larger issue here. Again, this is a wolf in sheep's clothing, where, somebody said, you don't know what you don't know, okay? We don't know, and so that's a problem. Here are, because there was a question the last time, a chart from information from the EPA as to the 20 different, summary piece from the EPA is the 20 different types of remediation techniques, none of which are described in their experts report. So if you turn, when you get this, to page 3, I mean, this just gives you an idea of different cleanup technologies. And you should be concerned, like I think anybody who lives in that area or adjacent there too, since you're talking about runoff when it rains and their site is opened up, okay, as to where these contaminants are going to go and whether the property is effectively cleaned up. And that is within the master plan, and that is within the zoning regulations. And the fact that some of these are cancer-causing carcinogens, or believed to be, This is published by the U.S. government for the compounds that were found on this site. And basically, the chromium is a carcinogen to humans, the cadmium is a known carcinogen, the arsenic is a known carcinogen, the lead is a probable human carcinogen, and some of the PAHs and ETPHs are, depending upon the specific ones, are known to be either carcinogens or possibly carcinogenic. So, and again, this is the U.S. government, the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry, and they have highlights on them, so just to direct your attention to various statements. And here's a statement of a long-term resident who's lived on Mill Hill Terrace.
Before you get there, can you just tell us what it is that you just put in front of us? Where does this come from?
Are you referring to, this the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry. It's a U.S. governmental organization,
It's a federal government
federal
agency?
federal government.
Okay.
And I
do you know-
believe it's an agency that may be part of another agency. If you look
Yeah, the
at,
bottom
it
says
may be part of the
CDC.
CDC, I believe. If you look at like page 7 of 7 of the Chromium one, at the last, it says Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry, the address, and it has the CDC number.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, the hyperlink at the bottom is obscured, it's just cut off. I just want to understand just who publishes this report, that's all. And you don't, we may not be able to answer that now, maybe afterwards you can just send in a reference to where this actually comes from.
The CDC is based in Atlanta.
Sure, is it a page in here? I'm just looking at the cover page. Yeah, what? 7 of 7? That's great, perfect, thank you. Page 7 of 7 of the first document. Thank you.
Just wanted to put into the record a statement of a gentleman who's lived on Mill Hill Terrace for the past 59 years, right across the street. And he's here tonight, and he'll offer his own statement, but he put together a written statement, asked me to submit it on his behalf, talking about the history of dumping on that site. And I just wanted to make this part of the record.
Commissioner
Yeah,
Kennelly.
thanks. I just want to kind of cut to the chase here.
Sure.
Because I was a journalist and I worked in New Jersey for 4 or 5 years, where there was a massive amount of residential development where there was actually chromium as part of production, not dumping. And eventually what it became clear was, at least in the tests that were done there, to allow that to, where in a fairly industrialized area, that for example with chromium, you literally would have had to put it in your mouth for it to be dangerous to build an apartment complex. That's what kind of was this. So what I guess I'm boiling down to here is, it is scary to hear these lists of potential carcinogens and all the rest. But is it essentially, you're providing us this, is it your contention that we need to act essentially to swoop in and essentially correct the mistake of our own Inland Wetlands Commission regarding this? In other words, that there's been somehow that you believe that there has been either willful or not understood consent to actually dangerous levels, life-threatening levels here at this site that we should be rejecting for that reason? That this evidence points that you're on the record? That's what you want to say?
Shouldn't be remediated in the context of development.
Right,
development
right,
by
exactly. I
parcel.
mean, right, because, but I just, you're asking us essentially to do that based on this evidence. Is that what you're saying? Not just be scaring people, but to really that you assert this. Is that it?
It's no intent to scare. The facts
Right,
are
but-
what they are.
Right.
Okay.
But
Their
you're asking us to vote
jurisdiction
yes
is.
or no. I want to understand if you're telling me that you believe this is sufficient evidence to that I, as a guarantor of the public safety in this town, need to say no to this. Is that what you're saying? What you're presenting me is sufficient evidence that I need to say no to this because it will be a threat to the health, public health and safety of the town. Is that what this
I'm
is?
saying more information is needed. I can't tell you that without conducting further remediation, that this issue is going to be addressed properly. I think here's the point. Your jurisdiction is different from inland and wetlands. There are not just wetlands and watercourses on the site. So there are other areas. The site is only remediating where the testing was done. And I'm telling you that that is unsafe because you're going to be opening up more areas other than where the testing was done, which would potentially spread the contaminants that were found there that aren't just limited logically to this particular site where they tested, but are in other areas. okay? And you don't have enough information on the remediation technique and whether that will ultimately be more potentially harmful than not, because you haven't been told that. So you have a lack of information, you have a different jurisdiction, you have regulations that tell you that under the POCD that you should be looking at these issues, and you either have a lack of information or common sense would tell you that just addressing the test pit or the well is not going to address on a more holistic basis the contaminants which exist on that property. Okay? So there was evidence that was presented about farming, plating that occurred on that area, and this goes back, a long time. But
Frankly, you don't need to look much further than the recommendations that you cited on page 21, among which are that the applicant should remove the debris on the site, including empty and rusted 55-gallon drums, above-ground tanks, ASTs, water heater, tractors, part of a car, automotive parts, solid wastes, cans, debris, etc. If upon removal of these features any staining or discoloring of the soils below the features is observed, assess the soils and remove any impacted soil if present. I mean, the
In that site.
reports and the recommendations are to carry out remediation. And in the context of doing that, if they encounter other contaminated soils or areas, the law requires them to remediate that which they find.
on the broader-based, it's a rhetorical
No,
question,
no.
I'm not asking, is it on the broader-based area of where all construction is taking place, or just in the test areas?
It is the broader area of construction, and you've made compelling points. You've introduced some scary data, as Commissioner Kennelly has identified, and I think the applicant is due to present some more information on rebuttal, and I think that, that we're deserving of that. But I don't want people to misunderstand your arguments to be that the applicant has come in here and said, well, we're going to build this, and we're only going to clean up that square over there because that's what inland wetlands told us that we should, and we're only going to remove that oil can, but we're not going to remove, that bag of trash on the property.
I think I haven't said that. There's the superficial site cleanup
No,
of the
and I shouldn't have said
observable
bag of
debris.
trash. But fine, the other water heater, that's on the, the other side of the tree and not the one that's cited in the
I'm
test
not,
pit.
Chairman Wagner, I'm not implying that. I don't mean to suggest that. I think the report is clear as to what they intend on cleaning up, and it's limited to because they're only going to go back in and test where they previously tested to see now if it's below that result. Their intent is to only do the remediation in those areas. The simple question is, are they doing a broad site remediation? Are they scraping all the soil? Because that's one of the things, all the soil off the lot, the lot where they're doing the predominant amount of the building, let's say?
Right.
The answer is no.
No, well,
And I know
No,
that,
we'll let
and
the
you know that,
applicant-
and that's what the report says.
Okay. Well, we'll let the applicant clarify that in rebuttal, but it is my understanding anyway that the site is to be remediated, and not just the test pit here, but not that land over there.
Are we aware of the type of remediation and whether that remediation is, potentially more harmful than good?
So I'm going to let the applicant, I don't want to engage in.
It was a
in the
rhetorical
debate.
question. I wasn't,
and I understand.
looking for
And
an
I'm going to
answer.
let the applicant just, to respond to this in
Right.
rebuttal. But, yeah.
So, let me conclude my remarks and presentation this evening by saying that if you look at this application and you apply the criteria under Section 27, all of the criteria, this does not pass muster. This is the wrong development for this property. It's a primarily, overwhelmingly residential area that already has a commercial senior facility in its midst. And the proposal is to add one, the scale of which has not been seen so far in this community, in this neighborhood. The associated issues with the impact on residential home values, they offered nothing. I've offered something tonight. The traffic and congestion issues that I've raised, that have gone unanswered and that you yourselves have raised, have gone unaddressed, and the studies they have performed are facially inadequate, the traffic engineering studies. And when you add in the potential of a Bronson development or a Giant Steps development, okay, which are in the same general neighborhood, that's taking a problem that's potentially bad already, that is bad already, making it worse and compounding it further. So the traffic issue, the health and safety issue, the impact on the neighborhood, the school, the bicyclists, the pedestrians, all lead you to one logical conclusion. You should reject this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You may, but just let's just give him just an opportunity to clean up. Okay?
Good evening. My name's Lois Lehman, and I'm a realtor in Fairfield. And I want to address the concern that a nursing home in the neighborhood would impact residential property values. Everyone is scared about any factor at all that might have a negative impact on the value of their homes. This is something I deal with 7 days a week, all day. So I have a lot of knowledge on the subject. I've heard no evidence here tonight that the addition of a nursing home in this neighborhood would have a negative impact on property values. I think, on the other hand, that a service that's so much needed in our community could have a very positive impact on residential values, because a community that doesn't provide services and housing for all of its citizens isn't a complete community. To look at an example right in our town, an institution that everybody thinks is great, Fairfield University. Let's look at the residential values immediately around Fairfield University, because the concern seems to be that those homeowners very close to the nursing home might suffer decreased property values because of the commercial structure. So right around Fairfield University, where everyone can see Fairfield University, and there is a ton of traffic, all of it going pretty fast, property values are quite high. In fact, some houses immediately impacted by all the traffic at Fairfield University were favored because Fairfield University bought residential houses because they needed them for visiting faculty members. It would seem to me that if a nursing home moves in, maybe they would have some employees who would want to buy houses close to work. There might be more interest in houses in the area. Another situation that I face, maybe not every day on the job, but certainly every week, are concerns of people who are elderly and have nowhere to go in Fairfield. There are couples living in houses where one partner tries to care for the other but can't anymore. There are children who agonize over where they're going to put mom or dad when they can't look after them anymore, and there's nowhere around here for them to go. Older people would like to stay in their familiar community where they can be near their doctors, near their families, near all of the amenities that they've been used to for so many years. And so it seems to me that we should welcome a different kind of residence for people who can't manage on their own anymore. So it's disturbing to me to hear a seniors residence talked about as if it was some other kind of commercial development, maybe like an auto body shop or something. So the seniors residence, I hear, should be something that's invisible from the rest of the community, something that we could hide, that there are going to be bad effects coming. There are going to be employees, transient workers walking from the bus stop to work. Well, if a seniors residence brings more jobs into the community, I think that would be great. And please, let's remember, these transient workers are the people who are looking after grandma and grandpa, so we welcome them and we want them there. Then there might be traffic. There might be a few more cars, but not really a lot of traffic. The property that we're in question now adds no beauty to the community. It adds no commercial value. It adds no taxpayer base. And we need more help with our taxpayer base, because that's the biggest reason that negatively impacts our property values. So I really wanted to say that I hope Fairfield could be a more welcoming community to seniors who are fragile and offer them a place to go within their own community that is really nice and where their children feel confident to have their parents placed, and where they can visit them close by, because I deal with people who have to drive over an hour to visit mom and dad elsewhere in their failing years. So I think that it would be nice if, as a town, we could try to make it easier for a nursing home to open in a residential area, in a nice part of town, not in a bad part of town, as though we don't want to see these seniors anymore. We don't want to be disturbed by them. If an ambulance comes because they're sick, heaven forbid we should hear the ambulance, because these are our own people and these are our parents. And there are many, many people in Fairfield who just can't care for their parents at home anymore, and we need some help for these members of our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other members of the public wish to be heard? Sure.
Hi, my name is Claire DeVitas. I own and live at 1313 Mill Hill Terrace, which is right on the sidewalk that Attorney Rosenstein presented a picture of. And my daughter attends Mill Hill School. My concerns as a resident, if this facility is built right on my street, are, definitely the traffic issue. I mean, there is one sidewalk which leads to Mill Hill School, and all the kids walk on that sidewalk, and that's the sidewalk that you were presented a photo of. There is a lot of bike traffic on that one sidewalk because all the kids from the neighborhood, all of those streets that shoot off of Mill Hill Terrace, Village Lane, Acorn Lane, so many others, I don't know the names, they all come onto that sidewalk and ride their bikes down to the school to go to the playground, to go to the Little League field, and that's throughout the summer, not just during school. We have what's called Walk It Wednesdays at school, where they try to encourage the kids to walk to school every Wednesday, and that's what we do. We walk it Wednesdays down that sidewalk. So, so I'm really concerned about the extra traffic. We all know about the facility that's already on Mill Hill Terrace, the other assisted living facility, and we've seen the impact that facility has had on the neighborhood. We do see the employees walking to work. We do see the ambulances coming, and I'm concerned about doubling or maybe tripling that, because I believe the proposal is for a facility much larger than the one we already have, and I am really concerned about the depreciation in property values. I think it absolutely will depreciate all of our values, and I know I visited a neighbor who was having an open house at 981 Mill Hill Terrace. It was renovated, a beautiful renovation of the Cape. It's on Mill Hill Terrace, right along that sidewalk. Right behind it is the open space, the undeveloped property. And when I was at the open house, someone who came in said, oh, too bad, looking out at the view in the backyard, too bad they're building that. And that's the first time I had heard about this proposal. I didn't know what they were talking about. So already, people are looking, not wanting to buy houses because of what's pending and what might be coming. They don't want to live with, a commercial facility in the backyard. And now that house, it's been on the market for 104 days. They're lowering the price. It's a 3,000 square foot house, 0.44 acres. And that house isn't selling because this thing could be in their backyard. And I mean, no one, I don't think any of the neighbors are against senior citizens, and I feel like that's kind of what this is becoming about, but it's the senior citizen issue, or the care of the seniors, is a pretext really for a commercial endeavor, and I mean, that's really what it's about. Yes, it's a good cause. We all want to take care of seniors in Fairfield, but there are plenty of other places that are more conducive to a commercial facility. So yes, we are really concerned about the trucks, the garbage pickup, the, janitorial staff, the cafeteria staff, the nurses' aides, the doctors, everyone. We're concerned about all of that. So thank you for hearing our concerns.
Thank you very much. Hi there.
Hi. Thank you. I know we haven't met before. My name is Lynn Moore, and I live in the neighborhood. I live actually on the corner of Southport Woods Road and Kings Highway West. So my perspective is from, if you would, the bottom of the hill. I've lived there for 17 years, and my children went to Mill Hill School, Tomlinson, and Ludlow High School. I've driven that road 4 times every day, taking them to school and back, school and back. So for me, it's like almost a meditation, because I drive 20 miles an hour every time, especially when I pass the school. So I would like to just bring a special emphasis to the traffic concerns that were brought up, because, and I think it would be best for our neighborhood if you could do a study on it, or maybe do a video, or stand there in the morning, or ask even the crossing guard. But when you come down that hill, it is somewhat blind, and just enough of a curve where I go to turn down Southport Woods Road. I go very slow from the stop sign at Woodrow to the turn on Southport Woods, because the curve coming the other way, if I don't time it right, I could get in a car accident. I actually didn't let my children walk to school, even though we live less than a mile away. And that was partially because the sidewalk hadn't been cleared, and the overgrowth from this particular property ate into it. And then after my children left that school, the sidewalk was repaired. And I've noticed, as I drive by there through the high school and everything, all the younger children walking and going there. But the parents do walk with them. And I think that's something to also be very mindful of. Because for me, my grandmother was at Southport Manor. So I visited her there, and I also took care of my elderly aunt who was in an assisted living in Wilton, and I drove to Wilton to see her, and she was in a Brookdale home-like looking atmosphere that had 55 beds. That's not what we're talking about here. It's not blending into the community, and I think we need to really think about that, because I do know we care and concern about our elders. However, I also want to make the case, and this is really important to me because I live next to the condominiums. The condominiums are almost assisted living based on the number of times the ambulances go there. So I hear the ambulances and see the lights. They're very polite, the way the firemen handle it. But I think you should study that and just ask them how they feel it would impact it, because between Southport Manor, which doesn't have a lot of sirens, but does have the ambulance traffic. But the sirens do go up Southport Woods Road, I would say a minimum of 5 times a week. Because I work from home, I hear it all the time, so I know that. So the amount of elderly people living there, it's not actually assisted living, but in practicality, it is. And they're my neighbors, and I care about them, not only their property values. That's important, of course, because that's my investment for my life. But I think understanding the traffic patterns of the emergency personnel. The other thing I'd like to also take, just because traffic is so important to me, and we've tried to get the traffic changed on my street, which may sound irrelevant and distracting, but in fact, the cars that come off the highway come down and they go to the post road to go to work, most people. So years ago, I asked the Department of Transportation to change that light to make it shorter at high traffic times, and they did make it shorter, but a lot of people shortcut onto Kings Highway West. They go by my house at 55 miles an hour. It's documented. There's studies on that, if you'd like to refer to that. 2,000 cars a day shortcut past my house. So if you come down the street to go to this facility, what is the traffic pattern? Now, people are going up Woodrow, And this extra 16 miles an hour, when you're talking about a 5-year-old kid, that'll be on all of us if this is a problem. And my kids are done, and they were safe because I drove them to school. But this is, I think, a really important concern about all of this. So if you came down and went on Pease, if you see that turn, and I hope you'll drive it, if you turn onto Pease, it's awkward and it's a smaller street, and then you do have to turn again and turn again. So a lot of people skip that who are going to Southport Manor, and I know this because I've walked my dog in the neighborhood for 17 years. So they go up the hill kind of fast because, well, maybe it's not like 50 miles an hour, but it needs a little lift to get up Woodrow, and the people coming down Woodrow come pretty quickly too. Now, that's a major concern for me, how to regulate that traffic, because I've lived there for 17 years and we haven't been able to slow the traffic down in front of my house. So this traffic pattern, when on a busy time, the people going off the post road are backed up onto the highway. So if you're going to proceed with this and do more studies, I think it's very vitally important to see that traffic pattern, and if you can alter it to change the lights to go a little faster so people aren't shortcutting or whatever, then those people who do actually work there and have to make a turn will not be rear-ended, because everyone's trying to save a few minutes on that street. So thank you for listening to my concerns.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Federico Vaca. I live at 646 Mill Hill Terrace. I'm a professor of emergency medicine at Yale University and a vice chair of our department there. And for the last 20 years, I've studied traffic safety. And that's my area of research. I'm funded by the National Institutes of Health. In my research, I have over 100 peer-reviewed publications and writings, scholarly writings in this area.
Can you just tell me your name and your affiliation again then?
Federico, F-E-D-E-R-I-C-O, Vaca, V as in Victor, A-C-A. And I'm a professor and vice chair of the Department of Emergency Medicine at Yale University School of Medicine. So, as I said, so I know a little bit about traffic safety. I also spent 2 years as a medical fellow in Washington, D.C. for the Department of Transportation, what's called the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. So, to hear the traffic safety component, or what certainly appears to be, in my estimation, lacking, two assessments throughout a year. When we think about injuries, particularly motor vehicle injuries, and we're studying motor vehicle injuries, we look at several different components and try to be very holistic and comprehensive. And we look at certain E's, that includes education, enforcement, EMS. Engineering is a core part of that, and the environment as well. And so to concentrate on the environment and the engineering component, from the engineering perspective, something like this, certainly the road geometry makes a huge difference. What can be seen, what can't be seen, coming around a bend or even in a straightaway. The lighting for, people that are of younger age, older age, dim lights, too bright lights, etc. These make a huge difference. Currently, right now, across the United States, we lose about 32,000 people a year in motor vehicle crashes, and it rolled into that are pedestrian injuries. And we know already, even for the upcoming year, the data that's coming out right now, pedestrian fatalities are on the rise across the country. And so that's a significant concern. You think about, it's about a little over 4,000 people that lose their lives in pedestrian crashes, and that's bicyclists, people that are on foot, walking around. And so 20% of those actually happen to be 14-year-old children and younger. And so with the rates of speed already at 40, 41 miles an hour, huge consideration there. Seasonal variation matters, a huge difference, particularly out here in the Northeast, right? When it's warm, it's warm. The cars react differently. The braking is different during those really hot periods of the year. When it's cold, icy, sleet, you name it. Things are different across the board. And the kids are going to school most of the time during those times, all different variations of weather. So I would ask you and really consider, just to say that, we need a more comprehensive examination of the traffic issue, traffic safety, with really a core focus on the pedestrians, the cyclists. Southport overall, from my perspective, having grown up in Southern California, is not a very walkable community to begin with. You see just one sidewalk there, and it's and I love being outside. I try to get out as much as I can to walk. But it's really difficult, and I don't do it without kind of taking, my life in my own hands at times, and trying to figure out, should I walk with the traffic across, against the traffic and these things. So it really makes a huge difference. And I come this also at it as I'm a practicing emergency medicine physician. I work in a trauma center, a level 1 trauma center. I care for adults, the elderly, 0 all the way to 105, and then some on occasion. And with that, when it comes to the trauma and the pediatric trauma, mostly there's a vehicular trauma. You can imagine pedestrians on scooters, bicycles, walking. And in the last 23 years of practicing emergency medicine, I've had to go to parents far too many times to tell them about, their child has suffered a massive head injury. They may or may not be the same ever again. Crushed chest injury. I'm putting chest tubes in somebody's, baby that's 3, 4, 5 years old, 10 years old. It's not a pretty sight. We do everything we can to try to save lives. And then it's my job after that, once we get them stabilized, if we're that fortunate, to go off and talk to the parents and the families and tell them, this is what happened, this is what we've done, we're doing our best. And so please take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Yep.
Hi, my name is Jessie Sprague. I'm 17. I live at 123 Pease Avenue on the street where the proposed emergency exit and entrance area is. And I just want to bring up the points of traffic as Lynn and Federico brought up. I just want to say firsthand that it is very dangerous to be outside walking or running or biking on the streets near Mill Hill Elementary. Sorry, 1 second. And just, it's very dangerous. I know, like, growing up, like, in the same house on 123 Pease Avenue, like, we've never been able to play outside in the street. It's too dangerous. Cars go way too fast. When you are driving on that curve, as people mentioned, like, people get right off the highway on exit 19 and go right up Pease. You can't even tell that it's a residential area because you see the restaurant and you see the dog carrying place, and you turn right thinking you don't want to go into the post road, and you can't even tell it's a residential area until you're already going like 40 to 50 miles up the road. And it's kind of a short street too, so you can't, like, by the time you're slowing down, you're already at the top. And when you are at the top, it's a very narrow turn. I can say going down that turn and coming up it, we have almost been hit like every other time we drive it. It's very dangerous. I would not ever recommend that there be an emergency exit or entrance right over there. And also, I run in the area between my house and Mill Hill, and it's dangerous. I've almost gotten hit by a car too many times to count because drivers are very careless. They drive way too fast, and they don't care about the area because it's drivers that are unfamiliar with the area that come off the highway, or they just don't know that it's a school zone. And I think it should be addressed. I work very close to there at Samey Southport Pizza, and I walk to work. And just the drivers on the post road too, like, there's no close crosswalks, and you have to go very far to find a safe crosswalk, or not even a safe crosswalk. The light is very short. You can barely make it across. I have to sprint across, kind of, to make it across safely. And it's just, overall, there needs to be more things done to make the traffic safer. There needs to be, like, signs put up, the school zone. Like, people need to be more aware that it's a school zone. And especially with the lack of sidewalks, you have to walk on the road. You can't avoid it. You can either, like, if you're walking away from Mill Hill, you have to walk on the sidewalk, and you can't, like, you're almost always having to walk on the street. And even if there's somebody else on the sidewalk too, you have to either walk further into the woods, which might not be there if this is there, or you have to go into the street where oncoming traffic might hit you. And it's very scary, it's very dangerous. I remember I went to Mill Hill Elementary School, and I was never able to walk to school. We either had to have an adult, or you just couldn't do it. You had to take the bus. And I just think, as, like, having grown up there, my younger brother still goes to school there, and all the other kids in our neighborhood, there are a lot more kids in our neighborhood than there used to be. There are kids that are babies, and they're, like, all the way up to how old I am, 17. And I just think it's a very big problem, and it should be fixed. And I would not think that putting in this Maplewood assisted living facility. I don't remember the exact name of it. I don't think that would be a wise decision in the best interest of keeping everybody safe in terms of the traffic. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
My name is David Sprague. I live at 123 Pease Avenue. And I've been involved in this project from the beginning when we were first invited by Maplewood to come and listen to their presentation at the Pequot Library and the Fairfield Library as well. The biggest questions that some others have already raised is we don't know what we don't know in a lot of cases. And, you know, a lot of things, reasons why to say whether we're for or against this project, and that's not really what I'm asking for. I do oppose the project. The emergency exit entrance for EMS vehicles is directly across the street from my house, and I will discuss some of those issues as I go through. But again, I first thank you all on the commission for your time and efforts. It's an elected position. You guys chose to decide to be here, and I appreciate you for doing that. I thank you for looking out for the residents of Fairfield and doing the job based upon the information that people give to you. And that being said, at first when Maplewood first made their presentation, there were a lot of questions that came up. They talked about the number of employees that they would have, and they told us that at first that there was probably only going to be about 16 employees that would be at the facility. And I work in senior care. I do a lot to keep seniors in their homes. I do a lot of equipment repair at facilities. So I'm familiar with the needs and the activities that go on, not only in a residential home setting, but also in a facility setting as well. I was stunned to find out that for the size of this complex that somewhere along the line somebody thought 47 parking spaces was going to be adequate for this particular building. I just don't see it, and therefore I'm looking at other things where would they go if they had 58 people that showed up one day. You know, is their driveway, which runs across a wetland zone, going to have people parking, pulling up off onto the grounds, onto the grass? Are they going to be parking on the sidewalk where the kids are walking to school? Where does the overflow occur? Because I really think that that amount of parking was greatly underestimated, just based upon where some of their other facilities are built. I suggest that you go and visit them at some point when there's a holiday going on. You know, those are the key times, again, when family tend to come and visit. Family that do attend those places, they think I'm only there for a day. I can pull off to the side of the road here and park. That should be fine. So. Individuals before me have said that this is one of the largest projects that's not connected to a direct thoroughfare in Fairfield. Yes, it's around the corner from a large thoroughfare, but there are a number of side streets that you have to travel in order to get there. One of the biggest things that I've noticed on Pease Avenue and Woodrow since they put in the new, they came through, they paved the roads. We were very appreciative of the new pavement. Then they came in with new curbs for us along the side streets. Woodrow and Pease Avenue lost an average of 20 inches in width on their roadways now. I brought some pictures. I'm sorry I didn't make tons of copies. I'm a little new to the whole process and sometimes forget that I'm supposed to make 13 or 14 copies. I'm on a very limited budget, so I'm not always able to do those things. But
That's fine. Just give a copy to Mr. Fallon and have...
I only have the printed copies. Toners are expensive. So the pictures primarily show how how narrow the streets are. I also have some video, and I didn't know what sort of format we'd be able to show in our setting today. But there's, I have a fair amount of video. I don't know if that would be appropriate to provide through email to the Commission's website, so that when you go to your deliberations, you might have a little bit more factual representation without having to actually go to the streets and see it. But if you just want to pass them around.
Mhm.
Mr. Sprague, will you just tell us what streets, what pictures?
These are on Pease Avenue.
So these are all pictures of Pease Avenue?
Those are pictures of Pease Avenue. The pictures are of Pease Avenue. One's at night when people have all been home and they've parked for the day. And what that represents is a single-lane road that does no longer allow for two cars to pass each other at any given point in time. During times of the day when there's shift changes, employees that are going to be coming and going, it's very concerning to me. I work out of my house. I leave at 10 o'clock in the morning. I leave at 7 o'clock in the morning. I leave at all different times. And as a result, there are many times that I come down to the intersection of exit 19 on Pease Avenue at the Indian restaurant, and you'll find in these next two images the traffic is backed up so bad that individuals block the intersection, create gridlock, and do not allow people coming from the post road turning on to Woodrow, turning on to Pease Avenue, and this includes school buses picking up our school children as well, do not allow individuals to cross the traffic and gain access to Pease Avenue and to Woodrow.
Those, after we look at those, we need to send those back, because those are the stamped copies.
And this last image is a picture of my mailbox, which still remains from where it was when the road originally ran by so the postman could get to my mailbox. And then in the background, you'll see the two new mailboxes from the new house indicating where they wanted the mailboxes to be placed so that the postman can get to them. And it's a pretty good representation of the 24 inches that I've lost just on that side of the road itself. Again, it's the concerns are, I don't think that there's been enough information given to provide the application to be approved. Very concerned about the phasing of the construction of this site. Where I live, where the emergency entrance will be, is going to be the back of the building. According to the drawings, it looks like it's going to be probably 60 feet off of the street. And one of the biggest questions that a lot of the neighbors have is, what is the phasing, the staging going to be for this project? Where will the construction workers park? Will they take up parking spaces that are currently needed by our residents in our neighborhood? Because a lot of people do work from home. They have multiple cars. They park one car in the driveway. They park one on the street. And if they're going to be doing that, how many construction workers are anticipated to be on the site, and where are they going to park until they've been able to clear some of the land that's going to give them the space, that's going to allow them to bring in their equipment, their materials, all of those items that are needed to start the construction process? Will they be coming in from the main entrance, where the main driveway is going to be, where their driveway is diagonally across from Fairview? Will the construction employees be parking on the sidewalk, creating a hazard for the kids that come to and from school on a regular basis? Are they going to be walking out into the street? Are some of the areas that are close to wetlands but not quite wetlands, are those going to be cleared and graveled so that that's where the employees park? I just don't see enough detail telling us how this project's going to progress from beginning to end and not impact some of the environmental aspects of things, traffic and safety of the children going to and from. Construction sites are very enticing to kids. You know, is there going to be a fence around the building as in a number of other construction sites? I noticed that the one that's over by BJ's now, you know, they wrap that thing with a big, huge fence. They don't want people in and out of there. With so many kids that are going to the playgrounds unsupervised, are they going to make a right-hand turn into the construction site and play around back there? If they are, there's a decaying foundation that's over 2 stories tall on the inside where the old warehouse foundation is for the ice house. There's the dam that needs to be rehabilitated. There's all sorts of things that kids can currently get into trouble in. I've been very proactive in protecting that property. There's numerous police reports made by me of people back there, bonfires, drug paraphernalia. Certainly want that area to be better for Southport. We're not expecting it to remain as an open space. There are tremendous amount of options. You could put a 55-year plus community in there. I worked for Huntington Company in the 80s. You never saw a plan for it, but there were several drawings that indicated that up to 20 residential homes could be built on that property. Now that duplexes are more acceptable, you could probably put 30 residential types homes in there. If you were to gear it towards a senior community of 55 years and older to live in there, you certainly would be able to maintain the tax base. You certainly would be able to have income coming in as a result of it. We have no expectations to have that property left alone. We just want it to be similar to the existing residential homes that are in the area as it is. We tried to get a traffic study for you. I'm a little frustrated that the town of Fairfield does not have a traffic engineer. And the cost alone, Maplewood has investors. They don't mind, well, they do mind, but they pay. They're taking a gamble on investing money to see if they can get this project through. As residents, we don't have those sort of opportunities to throw money out there to fight this. We have the town experts. We have Conservation Department. They're our experts. You're our experts. And we just feel that we're not getting enough answers back regarding the safety and security of the environment around us. In order to get a home study, I know we had an expert who said in favor of this, but she didn't really present too many actual facts of sales and homes. You know, Fairfield U is much different environment than a for-profit commercial business that doesn't offer any opportunities for the neighbors to walk in a park, to fish in a pond, to be on an open space trail. The Aspetuck Land Trust people pulled out of that transaction when it was going through conservation. We were enticed to find out what further information they were going to provide. Those sort of things do add value to our homes. None of that has seemed to made it to this point in this transaction for this project. So it leads us to believe that it would be a negative impact. Positive would certainly be open space and trails. You know, a huge selling point if I were to ever want to get rid of my home. So the traffic studies, they said the time frames to meet your time frames from when this project was first presented to you. We didn't have an opportunity to even consider getting a proper study. The appraisal process, I contacted Jeff Smith and I contacted Bowley Moore. They told me that they needed at least 6 to 8 weeks just to gather the detail needed to be able to present the facts should there be a need to go to court and present, stand by our findings, that they need physical facts to present the representations that they would present to you. So time frame wise, never had an opportunity to even allow that. I'm reminded of the questions that some of the commission raised over the fact that the traffic study submitted did not include any of the pedestrian or bicycle data, and that the hours and the days of the study were very limited and void of different weather patterns that occur. Anybody who's got a student at Mill Hill is far aware of what it takes to pick up your child when it's raining or snowing versus a sunny day. You have to easily add 15 to 20 minutes to that pickup schedule in the event of bad weather if you want to go and pick your kids up from the school. Traffic trying to come down off of Mill Hill Road onto Mill Hill Terrace and then make the U-turn into the parking lot where the baseball field is, a nightmare. Or you get the parents that disregard the instructions and try and pull into the main parking space that are in front of the school. None of the side roads seem to be included in their traffic studies as well. Side roads such as Woodrow and Pease Avenue, I didn't hear anything really listed as far as Mill Hill Road, and they certainly, those side roads right now have a hard time handling the traffic that's on there. So even if you wanted to add another 60 cars, and I say 60 cars because my opinion is that you're talking about 30 employees at least during the regular 9 to 5 hour shift that's going to be there. You have housekeepers. Their original 16 individuals sounded like management people. You had the manager of housekeeping, but you didn't have the actual number of people that were maintaining the rooms and changing the beds. Cafeteria, you probably included the chef, but you didn't include all the busboys and wait staff that were going to be required in order to feed the individuals while they were there. All the maintenance workers and others required to keep that building functioning. So I think it's easy to consider how many additional employees from their original estimate of 16 employees are there. Recently, there was a purchase of land by Fairview. My understanding is they bought $300,000 worth of land. It's behind the 3 new homes that are built on Mill Hill Terrace, one of which has been up for sale for quite a while since this project came in place. I just can't fathom them investing that kind of money without expecting to come to see you at some point and ask for some sort of improvement, expansion of their facility as well. So if they're going to expand, and let's just say that because of the land that they purchased, they technically might be asking to double their size, and then you have Maplewood who wants 98 beds, then you are quadrupling the commercial impact of facilities that are catering towards senior citizens, memory care, nursing home. Somebody else, I'm sure, is going to come up behind me and tell you the statistics for the average ambulance call that goes to Fairview. The medical staff that's at Fairview compared to the medical staff that may, under the description of Maplewood, is more than Maplewood. Maplewood is probably going to have less medical capabilities in their facility than is available at Fairview. So I think, in my estimation, that you would be increasing the number of calls. Right now, I believe it's about 170 average calls average a year. So you're talking well over 300 calls per year when you combine those activities. They've never discussed Lot 3. Lot 3 and the horse carriage lane, which is the cul-de-sac that's on the southern end of the property. If there comes to a point where there's another building that's going to be proposed, a southern campus there, and that projection could be additional beds needed. Now you're 5 times the number of commercial use of land in that neighborhood. I understand that you conceivably can't make a judgment based upon what's not in front of you now, but I do think that common sense indicates that there would be, if this doesn't remain residential, the commercial impact and increase of traffic and safety on our streets then becomes very hazardous. If it does, are those sidewalks on Pease Avenue and Woodrow, Are those part of the responsibility of the developer? Is it considered infrastructure enhancements? Is it something that, like when Bass Pro was being built in Bridgeport, that they needed to remediate the infrastructure of the travel ways for their customers to get there? Is that part of Maplewood's responsibility? Are they required to put the sidewalks on Pease Avenue and on Woodrow because they're going to primarily impact the amount of pedestrian traffic that's going to increase on those roads? The bus stop is at Shell's gas station. At that intersection, it's clearly stated no pedestrian crossing, and yet the Fairview employees on a regular basis cross at that intersection. So are our tax dollars to pay for the sidewalks that these people are going to be using? Or is the developer, because they're increasing traffic on those roads, required to invest in our town and make those changes? Will there be pedestrian crossing made available at that intersection? Because to go to Shell gas station to People's Bank, where the other bus stop is for them to go home, they need to do an illegal street crossing in order to get there. I've lived there for 20 years. My understanding is there's been at least 2 fatalities at that intersection. Just recently, about 10 days ago, we had a head-on collision with a Mustang and some other vehicle that pushed that car all the way up onto the Grass Meridian. And I don't know all the details of the police report, so I don't want to speculate, but I have a few ideas as to how that type of a, accident can occur, and I think there's been more there that also ought to be looked in. And if you do that, you're now impacting the traffic on the Post Road. You're going to slow it down because you're going to require a crosswalk where everybody comes to a stop. People are going to need to get across the road. Exit 19 is going to be backed up all the way on I-95. If that does occur, if it gets through, you can't get across Pease Ave. You can't come up the Post Road and turn left onto Woodrow, because people don't remember that according to the rules of the road, you're not supposed to block an intersection. People have said, oh, well, let's put don't block the box up on the roads. Let's paint big white X's on the roads and all. So at the exit 19 where the Indian restaurant is, if I'm trying to get to my house, if I'm trying to get to my house at 5 o'clock at night after rush hour, I have to wait for people who are supposed to be stopping at a stop sign, who aren't supposed to be blocking the intersection, for me to go home so I can make dinner for my family. All of these impacts. So do we have Pease Avenue become a one-way street? Does Woodrow become a one-way street? Because the current curbs have narrowed the road enough that it's dangerous, line of sight, coming off the crest of the hill at Woodrow, trying to go down towards the 7-Eleven. You don't see the other car coming up. I think it was Lynn Moore mentioned that aspect of things. Everybody said, well, that's a police matter. Well, it's been a police matter for 15 years. And they have a lot of other things that are just as important, but sometimes take precedence over the traffic issues. So the side roads, in my opinion, really need to be addressed. And if they're going to be fixed, they're going to need to be widened. They're going to need to have sidewalks. We're going to need to have a grass median between the road curb and the sidewalk. Who pays for that? I mean, the taxpayers are asked to pay enough, I think. And if they're going to have an impact on our neighborhood in that fashion, they should be paying for those things. Same with the remediation of the sidewalk where they're currently proposing. 41 miles an hour average shows that they're going 25 to 55 miles an hour, which means my son, wearing a bicycle helmet on that sidewalk, has his head 18 inches away from a mirror passing by on that road. If he's on the sidewalk, which not supposed to be on a bicycle, but you can't ride a bike on that street if you are not somebody who is driving, aware of having a driver's license, knowing the rules of the road, and being safe with other moving vehicles traveling around you. You can't have a 14, 15, 16-year-old kid on a bicycle thinking it's 25 miles an hour and people are going to be looking out for him. It's just not going to happen. And we've had that sign up that tells people how fast they're traveling. Doesn't seem to make a difference. the line of sight where the driveway is supposed to come is going to be impacted by pushing that sidewalk so that you have that median of grass, 36 inches. I don't know what the code is, but it seems to me you're supposed to have grass and then the sidewalk to act as a buffer between the cars. So if you're going to do that and you're pushing that all the way back, your driveway now is going to be on a slope, which even if they cut back on that easement that they're talking about for the line of sight, the car is now sitting lower and is not able to look to the left and see the cars coming around the corner from Eggcorn at a clip of 41 miles an hour with enough time to be able to judge, is that car coming fast enough? Are the people coming out of Fairview trying to turn left or right, because nobody uses a turn signal anymore? And then where am I going to go if all of a sudden, oh, I didn't see that car? So where their driveway is causing a huge problem. Pease Avenue, I've talked about the narrowness of the streets. They're going to, according to the emergency design, they're going to use a fire truck to break through the gate to get to the back of the building in the event of a fire hazard. I don't know what the total length of our average fire trucks are, but I can't see them with the narrowness of Pease Avenue being able to bang a right coming up a hill with my car parked in front of my house so that they could safely enter that area. They've talked about, well, we're going to put a buffer, we're going to make the environment nicer, you're not going to see the lights because we're going to put trees and we're going to put a berm along Pease Avenue. Well, you're going to need a 40-foot gap to put a gate in order for a fire truck to make that turn. So if you've got a berm and a 40-foot gap and another berm, how am I being protected from the noise of the sanitation trucks that are going to come and pick up the trash most of the time early in the morning? Cisco food trucks are 18-wheelers. How are for a facility that size, they're not going to take in the little 10-wheeler box truck. So all of that activity is going to be taking place. And, oh, there's going to be a buffer, you're not going to hear it. Well, right across the street from my house, the duplex that's next to me is a 40-foot gap that's going to let all that noise come in and out of our neighborhood. So those are concerns that I feel need to be addressed. The four-way intersection at Woodrow, Eggcorn, and Mill Hill Terrace. Anybody who's traveled along that way, that gap between stop sign and stop sign is far too long. Can't tell you how many times I've come to that intersection, I've tried to proceed forward, and the person who wants to go towards Mill Hill School while I'm traveling away from Mill Hill School waits till I'm halfway through the intersection and starting to turn left where they've waited long enough. And I don't know what the answer to that is, but it's certainly a traffic hazard. It's been attested to that accidents continue to occur there with more traffic. It seems to me that that's going to increase.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
I should talk to the police department. You got a lot of problems going on over there.
We have.
I mean, but that's not us, you know?
Well,
and then you talk about putting 20 homes there. What do you think's going to happen if you put 20 homes there?
Well, I think there'll be neighbors, and I think that we'll be able to talk the way
You have
we do
neighbors
talk.
now when you have problems going on and on.
I'm not saying there are neighbors that are going through these stop signs.
Okay, okay.
Okay, and we have asked for the police support. We've talked with Gary. The gentleman that's in charge of traffic safety for the police department. Yes, Wilkinson. So I mean, so these issues have come up. You don't see a lot of the accidents that occur now because now if it's under a certain dollar amount, the insurance companies say, hey, swap your driver's license and insurance car and move on. So a lot of these minor accidents that are occurring in our side streets with the increased traffic as it is now go unreported according to the numbers that you have access to. So while you might think, gee, you know, the accidents that the police report shows really aren't all that bad, that's an invalid number to work with. There's a lot of people where it's a fender bender, it's $1,000 of damage, and hey, call my agent, we'll work it out, don't worry, I'll cover it, so these are things that happen on a regular basis that, not being in that neighborhood, not being exposed to it, it just kind of goes to the wayside because there's no real documented numbers for it. Let's see. Along Mill Hill Terrace, when you come down from the elementary school, there's house number 812 and a number of others that are there. There's a large pipe that goes underneath Mill Hill that brings a lot of the water across to the Mill Hill, to the proposed property. In the wintertime, there's a lot of surface water that also runs off, and that particular slight bend to the right as you're coming away from Mill Hill School becomes very icy, becomes very treacherous. There's a lot more product that the town uses to make sure that that area remains safe. And so is the stormwater that comes across Mill Hill Terrace in any part of their plans or consideration? It wasn't taken into account so much because conservation deals with the property itself, but I think this is an area that you could have an opinion on in terms of where that water comes from going across the road and its impact at that point. And again, as the gentleman from Yale mentioned, that increases the probability of accidents as well. When Maplewood first made their presentation at the libraries, we pointed out the narrowness of Pease Avenue and our concern about the fire trucks able to gain access to the back property. At that point, we made a recommendation that should a project move forward, that it might be in their best interest to change that entranceway to where it's Sherwood Place and allow a direct straight line of access coming off of Woodrow, going down Sherwood Place, entering the property in that direction. Because of the lack of the lack of space of making an emergency vehicle capable of turning into the back end of the property, that might be an option should you feel it's necessary to approve this project. So in that case, too, you would change that whole buffer issue with noise and concerns. The other thing about that emergency entrance is that even if the Maplewood employees found it advantageous for them to gain entrance to work rather than going up to Woodrow, down to Mill Hill, which would add almost a half a mile of their walking, now you entertain the idea that the Fairview employees would also find this shortcut appealing and might also find that necessary to get to work sooner by using that as a cut-through, and again, now increasing more pedestrian traffic, requiring better sidewalks on Pease Avenue as a result of that as well. I'm very concerned that there's been no mention of the dam and the decomposing foundation on the property.
You've mentioned several things that are just not accurate.
Okay. Where am I missing it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying not to interrupt, and
Okay.
I'm letting you, build your record and say your piece. But
Okay.
that they have in this part of the proposal here is to, renovate the dam.
By another source. But we don't know what that renovation means. We don't know what it includes.
Yeah. Okay. Please continue. I mean, your comment about the pedestrian traffic that the Fairview people are going to cut through Maplewood is going to have an increased impact on Pease Avenue sidewalks. But if they cut through Maplewood, then they're actually not walking up Pease Avenue and around Mill Hill Terrace.
Well, Pease Avenue comes up from the Post Road, turns at the Indian Restaurant, and comes up the hill to meet at Sherwood Place.
I know where it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's Pease Avenue. So Pease Avenue means that if they're going to be coming up from the bus stop There's no sidewalk that goes from there to the exit 19 stop sign. And then from there, they're going to turn left and go up the street, and there's no sidewalks there either. And right now, there's barely enough room for a car to pass or a school bus to pass if there are cars parked on the street. So a sidewalk is really needed to be available for my kids to walk safely, for their employees to walk safely. So I don't see where that's...
I understand, and sidewalks are actually part of the application along their property.
Okay. But what about the not on their property? They're having an impact of people walking 4 homes.
Saying to you, you know what? The kids aren't safe in your neighborhood. Put a sidewalk in front of your house. And we tell it to everybody all along Pease Avenue.
Okay.
It doesn't work that way. When we get a new house that comes into town, we make them put sidewalks.
Okay.
But it just doesn't work
Well,
that
they
way.
didn't do that with the 2 condo
But we
units that were
can't
built
say,
recently.
we're building a building here, let's put sidewalks for the next 2 miles. It just
So,
doesn't
for
work that way.
example, along Mill Hill Road, where the school is, and the Colonial Tavern, you know, the new development there, so we required sidewalks to be put in where there were none.
Okay.
And now you have sidewalks that run all down Mill Hill Road in front of Mill Hill School, all the way down towards the overpass. And that-
I don't think that's entirely accurate. I
well,
think as
there's sidewalks where, for those properties that were renovated and where we could require new
Okay.
sidewalks to be
Right.
constructed. So,
But when you're-
we're making progress.
Right, and it's
Progress.
appreciated. I mean, my daughter, she has to go up by Mill Hill School and across, because she can't cross at the Shell station. But what they're proposing is adding to the traffic in the neighborhood. And I don't think it's fair to say you could take a piece of this and a piece of that and, you know, bandage it all together. It should be one concurrent, safe environment as a result. So I guess my point
You
is,
think
other
things are-
townships, other cities have certain requirements of their developers. I don't know, maybe it's not, maybe they just ask the developer to do it, and it makes it easier for the project to be safer for the environment of the neighbors, but they say to the developer, you know, you're going to have an impact on this intersection as a result of it, and we need it to be improved.
Where the intersection needs to be improved so that it can operate safely, then the developer has a choice. They can either work with state DOT in the town and renovate those roadways and intersections to make their project feasible, or they don't. And that's where that happens. So,
Okay.
And that happens in certain circumstances, like the plant factory needed to widen and make a turning lane to have their traffic engineering work for them, and that's what they've done.
Okay.
So, you know, a number of the issues that you've raised are really issues that go back and are unrelated to the project per se, but, and I don't know that I disagree that you've got some congestion issues and the 2 stop signs that don't, you know, actually line up. The 4-way stop is not, you know, entirely congruent. I mean, I drive the area all the time. I understand, but, you know, that's not going to be any different if this property is developed as the way it's proposed, or if 20 new homes go in a subdivision. You know, you'd be here complaining that there's going to be 20 new families, and now there are going to be more kids that are going to be walking to school, and the sidewalk is not wide enough to accommodate, you know, the additional children, and Mill Hill School isn't, you know, doesn't have the capacity to absorb additional kids if we have a 20-home subdivision. So it's a little frustrating.
No, and I agree, but I also don't think that residential circumstance is going to have as many industrial-type vehicles traveling around and through it on a regular basis with ambulances, because when the ambulance gets called, the fire department gets called.
I gotta tell you, we do a lot of subdivisions. You're gonna see a lot of garbage trucks, you're gonna see a lot of construction vans,
Yeah,
you're gonna
and-
see a lot of
yeah.
maintenance men, rotor guys,
For a short
landscaping
period of time during the construction.
Landscaping guys every week.
Yeah.
You're gonna see your fair.
No, no, and I agree.
You're gonna have
Well-
it. There is traffic.
Yes, Absolutely. But once they're completed, once they're built.
No, that's an ongoing thing.
Once it's done, we're not
My
going to
garbage guy
see,
comes every
we're
week,
not
does
going to
my
see, we're not going to see the cement truck, okay? But with this project, we will see the 18-wheeler from Cisco Foods. We will, have, unfortunately, the incontinent products piling up in a dumpster until they get collected. And I can tell you from being on site in June and July and August, some of those things are not too pleasant to smell. So the other thing that maybe you could inform me on as well is, my understanding was that Giant Steps made a proposal to increase as well. And I'm just wondering what the basis of denying their application, if it's appropriate to ask, what the reasons why they were denied, if it was traffic study related, and this is just around the corner from that type of a application as well. Wouldn't the same reasons why that particular item was denied be applicable to why this application for Maplewood should be denied as well?
Well, I'll direct you to the hearing, the transcripts, and the decision that we made
Okay.
on that. And,
Okay.
I mean,
Is that something I can find online?
yeah.
Okay, thank
Staff
you.
will be happy to point you in the
Okay.
right direction
All
and
right.
and help you with the record. You have access to the entire record.
Okay.
Without doubt.
Okay. Well, I do appreciate your time. I just feel that, in the end, having walked those sidewalks right in front of the Maplewood project where it's going to be proposed, and the safety of the kids, there's just not enough answers to the phasing of the construction, how people are going to park, how the work's going to get done at this point. So if they want to come back with more information, with a new application, I think that would be appropriate. Thank you.
Thanks so much for your comments, really.
My name is Michael Repko. I lived on Mill Hill Terrace for the past 60 years, directly across the street from this property. At our last Inland Wetland Commission meeting in November, members of the committee mentioned the neighbors had no expert witness testimony. Well, I can't afford expert witness testimony, so I'm going to give you my 60 years of expert testimony of living on Mill Hill Terrace. I'd like to get us all on the same page here and give a little bit of history on this property. And if I'm going off base here, just stop me, all right? On this property is an old ice house, once owned by Herbie Sherwood, who ran an ice and coal business out of Southport Center from the 1800s to the early 1900s. You can still see parts of the ice house from the I-95 exit. It should have been put on the historical registry. The site was then farmed for approximately 50 years. You can still see the farm equipment there from where the farm used to be, but you can't see most of the farm because it is buried under an enormous pile of fill, which brings me to my next section regarding health and well-being of the Mill Hill Terrace area. On this property, on the side of Mill Hill Terrace, there is about 500 feet long by about 100 feet deep of over 2,000 yards of fill and debris that was dumped there in the 1960s and 70s. A lot of it is boulders and dirt, but a lot of it is garbage, old houses that were demolished and dumped there. The Maplewood people say they're going to clean up the oil tanks, boilers, 55-gallon drums, and some of the contaminated soil. But more has to be done than that. Petroleum-based products, copper and lead, were all found in soil and water samples. One of the Inland Wetland Commissioners said it's not commercial lead, and I can't remember her exact words, but it was something like, it's not that bad. But the samples tell a different story, and I don't think she has any lead abatement expertise, and any lead found in samples taken is too much lead. Maplewood may do a general cleanup of the area, but these contaminants are coming from somewhere, and they are buried in that 2,000 yards of fill. So every time it rains, contaminants will just leach back into the soil and water. I've suggested all 2,000 yards be dug up and taken to a certified landfill. In the 1960s, ever since that first truck dumped there, My dad and neighbors all called the town hall complaining that dumping was going on in the wetlands. At that time, there was no conservation department, and after years of dumping, the health department finally put up no dumping signs. But that didn't help much, and for years we've been trying to get it cleaned up, but nobody cares. My next item is under 27.4.1 of the TPZ regulations. In the 1960s, a house had burned down at 930 Mill Hill Terrace, and the property was sold not long after that. Then a dirt road going back a quarter mile into the property was made. Next, chainsaws buzzing all day long, cutting down acres and acres of tall oak trees, and clouds of smoke everywhere because they didn't ship the wood back then, they burned it. No one knew what was going on. There was no mention of public hearings, and a year later, there's a 120-room convalescent home called Southport Manor, and we're stuck with it. At least that place is a quarter mile back in the woods. It's a single-story building. It's hundreds of feet from any homes, and you can't see it from Mill Hill Terrace. But I'll have more to say about that place coming up. Now here comes a 98-unit, 92,000 square foot assisted living facility complex with a driveway and building directly across the street from the convalescent home. This 3-story massive building will be seen from Horse Tavern Road, Mill Hill Terrace, Sherwood Place, Woodrow Avenue, and Pease Avenue. As per 27.4.1 of the TPC regs, this complex does not harmonize with the surrounding areas. There are no 3-story buildings anywhere close to this area. There are single-family homes surrounding this whole 27 acres of property, except for where the I-95 exit is. There will be more commercial traffic, more commercial lighting, and this massive building will be less than 100 feet away from homes on Sherwood Place and Pease Avenue. Property values will go down. And they probably already have. Right now, there are 4 homes for sale in the immediate area on Mill Hill Terrace because of this place possibly being built. But they won't sell. The word is out about this place. It's buyer beware on Mill Hill Terrace in Southport right now. I've heard a couple people say we need more assisted living facilities in Fairfield. Well, there's going to be one called Benchmark Assisted Living Facility, built right behind the Carrollton Convalescent Home in Fairfield, and that's a great place for it. There are no homes next to that place, only I-95. If Maplewood is built, it's only going to be a mile or so away from Benchmark. Why do we need another one so close? The Mill Hill area already has condominiums at each end, a school, a convalescent home. We cannot take any more traffic and commotion on our street. So anyone who thinks we need more assisted living facilities in Fairfield, I say put it where it is in harmony with the surrounding area. I don't see any way it could be argued that this facility could be in harmony with the neighborhood. My next item is sad to talk about, but it's something that needs to be talked about. Over the years, residents of the convalescent home have walked out the door without anyone even knowing it, even with wander guards on. Just to name a few, an elderly woman walked out and ended up sitting next to the fire hydrant on Mill Hill Terrace. An elderly man going down Mill Hill Terrace in a wheelchair. Luckily, someone saw him in time before he was hit by a car. One man was lost in the woods, and most recently, a man was found dead in the woods 100 feet from the building. In all cases, the police were called. So what will happen if someone walks out of Maplewood? The elderly resident's going to end up in Sherwood Pond, walk onto I-95, or end up on Mill Hill Terrace. It's a very sad situation, and we just don't need any more of it. My next item is under the heading of 27.4.3 of the TPZ regs. Mill Hill Terrace is going from a street where I could ride my bicycle as a kid on the street to beware of even walking on the sidewalk now. Delivery trucks, fire trucks, ambulances, school buses, and cars all speeding up and down the road. Sometimes walking on the sidewalk, you feel like you're going to get sucked into the road from the vehicles flying by you. I used to let the police sit in my driveway so they could catch the speeders. Stop signs have been put up all up and down Mill Hill Terrace, but it doesn't help due to the volume of traffic. We can't even get the snow removed from the sidewalk in the winter. Kids walking to and from school and neighbors have to walk on 12 inches of icy snow. Over the years, there have been many car accidents in this area of Mill Hill Terrace. I contacted the police to get a report on the accidents, but was told they won't arbitrarily give me any information on any accidents on Mill Hill Terrace. Now to the fire department. And I don't know, I only have one copy of this because they're pretty thick. But it's I don't know, can I hand it?
Yes, please, that's fine.
This is from the blog.
I'll let you take a look at it in a minute.
No, there's a lot of pages, I don't. Okay, to the fire department. I'm going to go back 3 years here, okay? And in 2013, the Southport Fire Department, going to the convalescent home, traveled down Mill Hill Terrace 128 times.
Sorry, just one second.
Yeah.
I think that's one copy of.
Yeah,
everything.
yeah.
So it's like, I don't know if you want to make it one document or stamp
It's
them
one
all
for
in, but
each
that's one
year,
copy. All right, thanks. I just wanted to make sure that
Yeah,
they
yeah.
didn't think it was multiple copies of the same document.
All right. Okay. In 2013, the fire department traveled down Mill Hill Terrace to the convalescent home 128 times. In 2014, they traveled down Mill Hill Terrace 149 times. And in 2015, they traveled down Mill Hill Terrace 170 times. Now, if you read that, you'll see that 3 of the calls were alarm system activation calls. 1 was a sprinkler activation call, and 1 was a kitchen fire. All other 442 calls were EMS calls. Now, what will happen when the Maplewood 98-unit facility is built? How many more times will fire trucks and ambulances come down Mill Hill Terrace for EMS calls? Now, my next thing here, I have some pictures also. These are pictures.
Thanks, we'll pass them down.
All right.
Okay.
All right, you ready?
Yes.
Now, this is a picture I took. It's approximately where their driveway is going to come out. This is looking west on Mill Hill Terrace. Now, it's approximate, I'm plus or minus 25 feet, you know.
No,
okay?
I think you're just about right.
Okay, now, the arrow points to,
You meant your perspective, right? You're just about right, correct in terms of your perspective. Their driveway is approximately the bottom of the photograph.
Yeah.
On the curb cut.
yeah, you know, plus or minus
Understood.
25 feet, you know, I'm not, you know.
Yep. I think it looks pretty good.
Okay, the arrow is pointing to the convalescent home driveway, and it's less than 100 feet, what the gentleman said here. It's 25 to 50 feet across from this driveway. Now, this approximately, again, from here to the corner, is maybe 300 feet. I did some measurements, but I'm not a surveyor, you know? They still need...
From here to the corner
Now,
of...
okay, actually, what I'm talking about is the 456-foot sight line, okay?
Okay, and when you say 300 feet to the intersection, you're talking about...
Not the intersection.
Pease or to Mill Hill Road?
No, actually, from here to this corner, because there's a bend in the road, okay? And actually, you could see one of the houses for sale in the picture, in the middle of the picture there.
Right.
But this is where they would have to cut down a lot of trees.
Right, so part of their proposal is to clean all this up, cut all this invasive species out, widen the sidewalk,
Yeah.
you know, and make a line of sight that provides the sight
Yeah,
distances.
now, I don't know about invasive species. This picture is one from where the 456 feet, in
Ends.
my opinion, looking east, okay? So traffic going to the...
I see.
All right?
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
What? What?
The car parked on the, on
Parked
this.
on the sidewalk.
Yeah, I know, you know, but sometimes it's even worse than that, let me tell you. Okay,
And that's the Fairview sign right there on the left, isn't it? That
That's the sign, the Fairview sign on the left on the other side of the road.
yeah, you know,
And all that overgrowth, you know, where that car is parked right now, that's the site.
I would say that they did have it marked out, but the stakes have been pulled up.
Right.
But it's like 20 feet in, you know? And I'll tell you right there in front of the picture, that's a dogwood tree blooming right now. So I don't know if that's an invasive species.
No.
Yes, right.
Right.
Huh?
It's, yeah.
You know, that's also a little hill, too. Okay. Maplewood needs a 456-foot sight line each way exiting their proposed driveway. Looking east, they might have it somewhat, but looking west, there is a bend in the road, and you can't see 456 feet. To get the sight line, you would have to cut down a real lot of oak, maple, and dogwood trees on town taxpayers' property. I don't think oak, maple, and dogwood trees are considered invasive species. And what are they going to do with the telephone pole that's there? Next, the talk on my section of Mill Hill Terrace is that the people renting the property at 969 Mill Hill Terrace, where this easement for cutting down trees will take place, I was told that they have first picks to buy the house, or they have to get out by June 1st. So what will happen with this property, what will happen with this easement if the property is sold? If the new owner wants to put up a line of arborvitae trees to block out the Maplewood facility driveway, then there goes the sight line. So there is no way in the future to guarantee and maintain the 456-foot sight line.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I really don't mean to cut you off. We've been at this for a while. We got a curfew of 11 o'clock. It's about 15 minutes from now.
All right.
So we're not going to finish. We have other people who, want to speak, and have been waiting. So we're certainly not going to finish this evening. By show of hands, how many more people are here to speak? Members of the public wishing to be heard? In about 4 or 5 people.
I just have another paragraph
Okay.
and a couple pictures, and I'll be done.
Okay.
All right, or you want me to get what?
No, please. Let's try to at least and allow these folks who have been standing over here waiting patiently to get in tonight.
I got some more pictures here. Now, these pictures are taken at the bottom of my driveway. One's looking east on Mill Hill Terrace, one's looking west.
It just occurred to me that someone might have misunderstood. I'm not suggesting that if you don't get to speak tonight, you're not going to be able to. We're just not going to be able to finish the public hearing tonight. So we might be able to, after you get another 1 or 2 or 3 people in, but if we don't finish, the hearing will remain open, and it will be continued until our next meeting, when we'll resume the public hearing, and anybody that didn't get a chance to speak tonight will have a chance to speak then, and the applicant will have their rebuttal at that time. Okay? Just wanted to be clear about that.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, what's your address number?
792.
792, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Please continue.
Okay, yeah, that's at the bottom of my driveway, all right? Right, that's at the bottom of my driveway, looking east and west. Now, you might notice there's almost a car accident at the top of the picture there, you know? On Mill Hill Terrace, we have a unique situation. We have condominiums at each end of Mill Hill. We have a school, school buses, parents driving their kids to school, and a convalescent home with employees, families visiting, and commercial vehicles traveling up and down Mill Hill Terrace. We also have a handicap playground at Mill Hill School, which a lot of people visit. We also have a Little League baseball field at Mill Hill School. And that picture shows you what goes on during baseball season on Mill Hill Terrace. Now, I will say the town made the parking lot a little bit bigger in the fall, and I don't think baseball season has started yet, so.
It has. This, I think, to be fair, this is opening day ceremonies. This is, you know.
I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But it happens all the time.
Well, once a year, anyway.
Well, it happens more than that. I've been complaining 10 years about that, you know, and nothing ever happens. You can't even walk on the sidewalk. Sometimes this scene is worse with cars parked on both sides of the road, and sometimes it's not so bad. Doing a traffic study taken out of some book with charts and graphs doesn't give you a true picture of what's going on Mill Hill Terrace. Now, this traffic counter box that was placed in front of 981 Mill Hill Terrace on January 21st and 22nd, in my opinion, was not in the correct place. That was put west of the convalescent home driveway. Almost all of the traffic comes from the east down Mill Hill Terrace. Ambulances, fire trucks, that all, they did not capture any of the family's employees' delivery trucks, ambulances, or fire trucks that turned into the convalescent home driveway. So with all due respect, I challenge this traffic study report, and I hope you commissioners will also. I have more raw data than their report, and I have 60 years of traffic experience on Mill Hill Terrace. So in closing, thank you for letting me give my report. And I'm sure I've stated enough and true reasons why this Maplewood facility should be voted down with a no vote, and I hope you will vote no on this for the sake of our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thanks very much for your comments.
Hi, my name is Landon Westerland, and I live at 120 Acorn Lane. I think it's important for the commission to hear some voices from the community that are supportive of the project. However, you may be a little disappointed. I only have about a half a page of notes. And how did we reach that conclusion? Just so that you know, my wife and 3 kids live on Acorn Lane. They go to Mill Hill School or have gone to Mill Hill School. We travel up and down Mill Hill Terrace a lot, as you can imagine. And when we heard about this project, my wife came to the last meeting with a mindset that she was going to be opposed to the project. Now, she found out a little bit about the project and thought, well, this is interesting. This may not be all that bad for the community. So she started out and she started to do some homework. So right behind our house runs the driveway up to the other nursing home, convalescent home. And so we have that traffic go behind us, the emergency vehicles. And I will tell you where we live, it's not a problem and it's not a bother with those emergency vehicles. They've turned off their sirens and lights, and so that's not a problem. But we thought, well, what is that going to do when we have a similar facility? So she spent time on the 9/11 logs for the city of Norwalk, looking for the other Maplewood facility. And there was averaging about 5 to 6 emergency calls a week. You know, you spread that over a week, it's really not that significant. So that was one of our big concerns. We thought, well, is Maplewood a good neighbor? And so we know people that live in those other communities and that are nearby those Maplewood facilities. And so we called those people, and they indicated that they thought Maplewood were actually good for the community, that they were ultimately provided a positive facility for the community. So we thought that that was positive. And then we also know some people that have dealt with them as a city government employee and talked to them recent to one of their recent developments, and they indicated that they did everything that they said that they were going to do during this process. So we thought about that, and then we thought about, well, if this doesn't go through, then what are some of the other options that could be used for this property? What we thought was positive was that we increased the tax basis of Fairfield, but we don't put more kids in an already overtaxed school at Mill Hill. You know, we have kids that go there, we understand how overcrowded it is, so here's an opportunity to take something that generates little taxes, improve the tax base without putting additional burden on our overextended school system already. When I hear about the safety, there is a problem along that Mill Hill Terrace, and it's that sidewalk that runs. Although recently improved, as a recent speaker had indicated, it is still not sufficient, and the forest is beginning to regrow over the sidewalk that they put, and there's no buffer there. You know, it's right next to that street. And so our understanding that part of this proposal is that they're going to widen that sidewalk and put it within the City of Fairfield regulations for sidewalks. And we think that that's going to be a huge improvement to the community, as my sons often ride their bikes along that street and walk to school. And so we see that that is a big benefit of this project, and we'd like to see that the sidewalk extend for their entire property. We think that that would be beneficial. We realize that this is probably not your purview, but we think some additional, some signs associated with the school and slowing down would also be added to the safety of the overall community and the children that walk there. The other things that we studied beyond just looking at the 9/11 logs and talking to other people in the community, we reached out to the folks at Maplewood to understand what they were planning on doing a little bit better with the project. Some of the things that we were told that we thought would also provide benefits is they're going to remove the invasive species from the what you'd call the forest currently, and it really needs to be done. It's overgrown. You can't walk back there because of all the pricker bushes and all of the undergrowth that has occurred. So we think that that's also a benefit. They're planning on putting some walking trails in through the woods that the public will be able to have access to, and we thought that that was also good. We've looked at the landscaping. We think that it's an improvement to the forest that's currently there, and we believe that it is a fit within the general community, which really the fit is we've got somewhat of a mixed-use neighborhood right there. We've got 95 right on the other side. I don't foresee that becoming a new single-family development with it being so close to 95. So other options for the property could be more of a multifamily, maybe an affordable housing project. We think that all of the problems that have been discussed today would be accentuated with a multifamily project there that had more residents, people that drove all the time, or that we put in a whole bunch of new single-family homes. So those traffic issues. So ultimately, we see this as a real positive for the community, and I trust that you'll weigh all the testimony today and make a reasoned decision. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your comments.
My name is Hector Guillen. I live on 1043 Mill Hill Terrace. And I think there has been a lot of good points made tonight. The project does have some, they are trying to make some efforts to mitigate the impact that the building is going to have in the neighborhood, the character of the neighborhood. Now, I guess the character of the neighborhood is probably based on the zoning district, which I believe the zoning district is A, B, C.
It's residential.
Well, residential.
It's residence A, B, and R3, and there's also a DRD zone involved.
So that means that it's single-family detached homes, right? It's detached homes.
Well, there are a number of, hold on, guys. There are a number of permitted uses in those zones, not only residential homes. The fact that a zone is called a residential zone does not mean that only residential homes can be built in that residential zone. One of the permitted uses are homes for the aged, convalescent homes, schools, etc., like we see in this particular environment, right?
Yeah. So the character, I mean, I think if I look at section 27.41, it talks about the type, character, and size of use of the building, and the structures should be in harmony. I mean, the residential use, it's really a single-family home, and it's detached. That's the overall character of the neighborhood. Well, it is, of course, but we're putting a 90,000 square feet building. So basically, it's not within within the character of the neighborhood. I think the building itself that is being proposed, it is too big, the size, and the facilities that it requires. I mean, I think if you have 20, if you're saying that you can have 20 detached homes, I don't think the type of traffic, the type of lighting and parking that would be required, it would be just like a supermarket parking. Because you're going to need, I think somebody mentioned that it's 48 spaces, but the reality, it seems to be more than that. I mean, if you only approve 48, that's fine, but 48 parking spots, it's a lot of parking, and it will require lighting, and that it's really not the character of a single-family home, detached residential neighborhood. I just wanted to clarify the fact that the building, 90,000 square feet is way too big, and it really does not comply with the, with Article 27.41 in terms of size, use, and and even character, because 3 stories, you know, it's just way too high. It's just, it is just way too big for the neighborhood. I think somebody else made already points in terms of traffic. I'm not going to go into that. But definitely, it just seems to me the character and the use and the size is wrong for the neighborhood.
Thank you very much for your comments. Yep. Show of hands, is there anybody, some people have probably left already, so I'm not going to close it. We'll take one more, and then we'll break for the night.
I think you have a 2-minute curfew, so I'll try to be very brief. My name is Raj Mehta. I have 2 properties in the area. My parents live in a condo in Southport Woods, and I live on 160 Evelyn Street. I originally was opposed to Maplewood. I thought it would hurt the property values. A lot of what the previous gentleman, Landon, said, I think I've done my research too, and I think I briefly would say what the vice chairman and the chairman were saying earlier. The alternatives seem to be worse. So I would like to at least express that I support this. I don't think it would be great if nothing would happen and everything would remain the same, but something is going to happen, and I believe this may be the best investment opportunity for the town in terms of taxes and for all of us, like the realtor woman said earlier, even the people living close by, we may all gain in the end. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to keep the public comment portion open, and we'll resume the public hearing at our next meeting. We'll finish that, and then we'll have the applicant's rebuttal. Okay? I'll adjourn the meeting. Hmm? This will be put over to May 10th at McKinley.